Path to Mediterranean Hegemony. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, National Debt. His Excellency the Grand Duke. This is our cabinet's strategy for dealing with the upcoming fiscal deficit. Constantine handed over a document to Ferdinand in an uneasy mood. After taking the information, Ferdinand read it carefully. In fact, as soon as the cabinet meeting ended, Ferdinand received the news, and he was not surprised by the result. Frankly speaking, the decision of the cabinet is not wrong. It does not blindly pursue political achievements and ignore the actual situation. But it does not mean that Ferdinand is willing to accept this result. As a traveler, he knows the cruelty of the next battle. Looking at the performance of the Balkan countries in World War I, Serbia, as a fuse, was directly destroyed, Romania was beaten and swayed, Greece was confused and did not solve its own problems, Bulgaria was on the wrong team. No matter how good the performance is, it is no use. Ferdinand knew very well that if he could not accumulate enough strength before World War I, he would inevitably become cannon fodder at that time, and the ending would be a miserable anyway. The projects started in 1893 will not change, and the projects planned by the cabinet will be cut in the next 3 years. It is very simple to block the cabinet's resolution. Ferdinand can easily veto it. But it is troublesome to solve the fiscal deficit. International loan? No! With strings attached. It's enough to bring anyone into disrepute! So what about issuing bonds? It seems feasible. The premise is that someone is willing to buy it. Right! As long as you issue bonds, what you can't sell is a big deal. It's a business anyway. The currency of this year is directly linked to gold, and there is no depreciation! Then at least the deficit of 1894 can be solved! Mr. Prime Minister, haven't your cabinet thought of other solutions? You must know that these projects are very important to the future development of Bulgaria, Ferdinand said with a pretense of embarrassment. Constantine was shocked. And it really came, he hesitantly said, Your Excellency decaying. Other than that, we can only borrow from the international financial market. But you know, the economic crisis is still going on, and the price we have to pay to find international loans is too high. As a last resort, we can only cut some items that are not particularly important. After listening to Constantine's explanation, Ferdinand's expression did not change in the slightest, and he said calmly, I know everything you said, but why didn't you consider the country? With the reputation of the government, issuing bonds at home and abroad, even if the interest is set a little higher, we can accept it. In this case, the price we pay is just some economic benefits. After listening to Ferdinand's words, Constantine's eyes lit up and then dimmed. With a wry smile, he said, Your Excellency decaying, I'm afraid this is very difficult to do. The funding gap of the second 5-year plan is too large, so it is difficult to sell so many bonds. Even if we set a higher interest rate, there is no consortium to subscribe, and it can be sold. It would be good to go out 10 million. Ferdinand said casually, Even so, we can solve the capital turnover in 1894, can't we? We will talk about it later. If there is really no way, we will continue to implement the current plan. After thinking about it, Constantine said, Your Excellency, in theory, these are all feasible, but we also have to consider the issue of interest. Now we have to pay more than 12 million levies of loan interest every year. If these bonds are added, then in the future, our interest expenses alone may reach 30 million leva, which is close to 2 layers of fiscal revenue. Oh, is it the 2 layers of fiscal revenue now? Ferdinand asked rhetorically. Yes. Constantine, so easy to handle. Don't forget that our economic growth rate is not slow, and the fiscal revenue will definitely be much higher than it is now. Then the interest is not a problem. The premise is that you can sell it. Ferdinand said with confidence. What a joke. When the second 5-year plan is completed, Bulgaria's national strength will be greatly increased, and it is not easy to transfer the crisis! Having dismissed Constantine, Ferdinand knew it was time to raise money. He has long known that the international financial market has limited interest in Bulgaria, and now there is an economic crisis, and everyone is busy. There is no need to consider it in China, except for the big buyer Ferdinand. The others are not worth mentioning! Ferdinand is still thinking about how to raise money, and the cabinet government has begun to prepare for the issuance of bonds. After leaving the palace, Constantine did not delay and hurriedly convened a cabinet economic meeting. Constantine didn't hesitate, and said the matter directly. "Gentlemen, I am calling you here now. It's the issue of the previous fiscal deficit. Just now I went to the palace to report the cabinet's collective resolution to the Grand Duke, but it was not approved. And put forward a new idea, to issue bonds with the government's civil justice, and borrow money from the private sector to solve the deficit. Now our task is to determine whether it is feasible. If so, how should the bond be issued?" After listening to Constantine's words, a new window was undoubtedly opened, and everyone fell into contemplation. In fact, the issuance of bonds has long been nothing new. But unlike later generations, in the 19th century, the purchasing power of ordinary people was limited, and it was the consortium who really had the ability to buy. The sale of bonds can usually only be endorsed by the bank, and the agent sells to all walks of life. Anyway, they have to be drawn by the bank, so many times, people would rather go to the bank to get a loan than to issue bonds that may not be able to be sold! Your Excellency Prime Minister, there is no problem in issuing bonds in theory, but how to sell them? You must know that our funding gap is not 1,800,000,000 leva, but as high as 17 billion leva, and it may even eventually be breaking through 200 million levs. There are not many financial institutions in the world that can afford to eat, and there is not enough interest. I am afraid it is difficult to drive them." Chekhov asked a question. Everyone turned their expectations to Constantine in unison, hoping that he would have a good solution. Constantine explained, "This problem, in my opinion, can be solved in batches. Our funding gap does not happen all at once, and there is no need to issue so many bonds at one time. It can be introduced to the market in batches and gradually. In this way, there will be more financial structures that have the strength to undertake, and we can also pay as little as possible." Chapter 102, Bonds, Gold Mine. After a pause, when no one spoke, Constantine asked by name, "Mr. Kennedy, you are an expert in the financial field. How do you view this issue?" "Your Excellency Prime Minister, with all due respect, even so, we can't do it. The international reputation of the Bulgarian government is not enough to be trusted, unless a consortium is willing to take over. Otherwise, it is the limit to be able to sell 20 to 30 million, said the Chancellor of the Exchequer Kennedy. No one refuted his judgment. In this era, the issuance of bonds by the United Kingdom and the United States must be supported by a consortium, otherwise it will not be sold. Ordinary people do not have much money at all, and there is no way to talk about purchasing power! Then what about raising the interest rate? Constantine asked reluctantly. Kennedy thought for a while and said, "According to my personal preliminary estimate, if the annual interest rate is 7%, it will probably be able to sell 20 to 30 million. The annual interest rate is 8%, and it will probably be able to sell around 40 million. The annual interest rate is 9%, about 50 million, about 10 million. With an annual interest rate of 10%, about 65 million can be sold. With an annual interest rate of 11%, about 90 million can be sold." Constantine suddenly interrupted him and said, "Mr. Kennedy is fine. I don't need to talk about it later. Presumably even if we know, we can't pay the interest. Let's just say, what is the highest interest rate we can bear?" The interest rate of 10.5%, coupled with the current international bond issuance fee rate of not less than 2.5%, the interest rate we bear has actually exceeded 13%. Once this line is exceeded, then the issuance of bonds is not worth the loss. Kennedy said without hesitation. This is almost twice the loan interest. Chekhov exclaimed, the accounts can't be calculated like this. The interest on the loan is indeed lower on the surface, but what about the additional conditions? If you take a comprehensive long-term view, the payment price of an international loan is actually higher. Kennedy explained. After some research, the cabinet decided to issue bonds. Although the interest rate is a little higher, it does not involve sovereignty! As long as the country completes its industrialization, then the fiscal revenue will definitely increase substantially, and it will slowly hold back! Issuing treasury bonds is not an easy job. Although the treasury bonds of later generations will be rushing to buy, the people of this age are poor! No matter what the interest is, you have to have money to buy it. Treasury Secretary Kennedy, now in a dilemma. Although the government has decided to issue treasury bonds, the specific amount and high interest rate are all for the Ministry of Finance to calculate and demonstrate before reporting. Mr. Minister, all the staff are in place, you can start at any time. The secretary reminded Kennedy still has integrity. In order to get a reasonable number as accurately as possible, he invited all Bulgarian mathematicians and financiers to participate in the calculation together. After listening to the secretary's reminder, Kennedy stood up and said, "Then let's go, don't make everyone wait." In the living room, experts and scholars gathered in twos and threes and whispered. My friend Stout, do you know that the Ministry of Finance invited everyone here today? What's the matter? Holman asked suspiciously. Lay. Aren't you kidding me? I'm doing math research, you're doing economics, or are you a consultant to the Ministry of Finance? You don't even know? How could I possibly know? Stout glared at him one glance, dissatisfied, said, "Damn, I'll just ask." You know that under normal circumstances, the Ministry of Finance has nothing to do with you, but I asked you to come over suddenly this time. I thought you knew, Holman said gloomily. Kennedy's arrival interrupted everyone's communication, and the scene suddenly became quiet. Gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to meet you here. Your time is precious, so I'll make a long story short. The reason why I invited you to come here today is for the issuance of national debt, and the secretary will send you the information. You can browse it first. A bit. But the content must be kept secret, Kennedy said cautiously. After taking over the file, everyone carefully browsed it, and the more the content was read, the more shocking it became. After a while, seeing that everyone had finished reading, Kennedy said earnestly, everyone understands the preliminary situation, and the next work is up to everyone. But please note that this matter must be kept secret. Once it is leaked, the consequences will be disastrous. Everyone nodded in unison, and everyone who sat down was subsidized by the government. At the end of the 19th century, these theoretical studies were done for public welfare, but there was not much other income. Especially in a small country like Bulgaria, it is difficult to be a consultant to a company, and it is difficult to write a presence in the newspapers. Everyone is more interested in industry than theory! Inviting experts to participate is not enough. Kennedy is very clear that the opinions of these experts and scholars can only be used for reference. Ferdinand was not very interested in the interest rate calculated by the Ministry of Finance. He knew that it would not be too low anyway. How can unsecured borrowing be cheap when the international interest rates of this era are there? For the gold standard, Ferdinand is still very troubled, and gold reserves are not easy to handle. If possible, Ferdinand really doesn't mind changing to the credit standard. Of course, this can only be thought. In the current situation, whoever issues credit currency, it is estimated that inflation can compete with Zimbabwe. The Balkans have been a major gold-producing region in Europe, with mining going back to prehistoric, ancient times. How much gold reserves in Bulgaria, Ferdinand has not remembered. Anyway, in the 21st century, still exporting gold to China. Anyway, at the end of the 19th century, the Bulgarian economy was so large in history. In order to make up for the deficit in foreign trade, gold has always been in a state of outflow. Ferdinand, who is short of money, is now targeting gold mines. You must know that the assets of the Austro-Hungarian Bank in Bulgaria were acquired before, including minerals in many areas. However, due to the short time to start, there is no time to large-scale mining. Gold mining technology, Ferdinand is not lacking. After all, United Mining Co., Limited has been operating for several years, and the technical equipment is the most advanced in the world. Oh, the mining industry in this era does not have much technical content. The internal combustion engine has not yet become popular, and there are not many machines that can be used, and most of them rely on manpower. Mining is not a good job, labor-intensive and dangerous. Ferdinand estimated that there was no large-scale mining in the Austro-Hungarian Bank before, and not enough workers was also a reason. After all, mining is a high-risk job, but Bulgaria has a limited population, and a few miners will be recruited to do it. Carl, have you figured out all the gold mines under Royal Bank? Chapter 103, Immigration. Butler Carl responded, Grand Duke, we have figured it out. At present, there are 5 large and small gold mines under the Royal Bank, and the preliminary estimated reserves are about 180 tons. There are also mining rights in several states, not proven. Well, if there is no proven place, organize manual exploration as soon as possible. Is there a mining plan for the identified gold mine? Ferdinand: Yes, Grand Duke, we will organize personnel immediately to conduct a large-scale exploration. The 5 gold mines that are already being mined were not very large in scale before, with less than 1,000 mining workers. 2 simple mining farms will be developed for key development, and the other 3 mining farms will be temporarily mined on a small scale. It is planned to recruit more than 20,000 miners, mainly for migrant workers. Butler Carl. Ferdinand nodded, satisfied with Carl's plan. It is undoubtedly practical to mine the easy and then the difficult, and it also satisfies Ferdinand's purpose of raising funds in the short term. All miners recruit outsiders, which can save labor costs to the greatest extent, and mining is a high-risk activity, and the occurrence of personnel casualties are inevitable. Bulgaria has a limited population and every citizen's life is precious. And if there are too many deaths, the domestic public opinion will not be able to suppress at all. After all, there are so many relatives. It doesn't matter if the outsiders are there, before they merge in. Ferdinand doesn't feel bad about how many dead Ferdinands die. Anyway, there are people on Mountain's side! Go ahead and do it. The resettlement agency will provide you with convenience. I hope the gold mine can be put into production as soon as possible. Ferdinand said seriously, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, please rest assured, you will receive good news in the coming year. Butler Carl said with a smile. Count Paul has been in a good mood recently, since serving as the ambassador to Bulgaria. Although his status is incomparable to that of the ambassador to Germany, his wallet has grown a lot, and he has also made a bunch of new friends at home. Since the establishment of the Bulgarian-Russian alliance, the number of immigrants from Russia to Bulgaria has been increasing day by day. Of course, the matchmaking of Count Paul is also indispensable, and the commission is naturally indispensable. The Russian Empire is now in its heyday. Not to mention that it is peaceful in the country, except for the Jews who are shouting and beating. Overall the world is peaceful. Naturally, there are very few immigrants through the normal route. How can it be possible to meet the needs of Bulgaria? But it doesn't matter, as long as you have money, you can always find someone. With the gradual promotion of mechanized agricultural technology, the insightful people among the Russian aristocrats have keenly discovered that the once precious wealth, serfs, is now of little use. In history, these serfs or farmers were abandoned by the nobles and gradually migrated to the cities and became workers. Now the nobles have a new option, which can be sold to Bulgaria. No, it is to realize the great strategic concept of assimilating Bulgaria as soon as possible and expand the territory of the great Russian Empire! Count Paul's business has increased, and because of the change of position, there are countless things to help you connect, and the largest population smuggling group in human history was born! Now it can be said that it has been professionalized, and prices can be clearly marked. Young men, women, children, and the elderly, the prices are different. Not only that, but also different ethnic groups, The prices are also different! It seems that I want to go to the supermarket, and you can buy it for you. As long as you can afford it, you can have everything. Ferdinand is not a fool, he wants everything, except honest farmers. Others like street gangsters, criminals, revolutionaries, etc., are all turned away. You must know that there are more than 200 ethnic groups in the Russian Empire, and Bulgaria is not required by any ethnic group. First of all, don't do it if the language, culture and customs are too surprising, and secondly, don't do it if the ethnicity is too independent. If you don't know a bunch of characters, you can't even figure out which ethnic group you are! Under such conditions, most of the peoples of the Russian Empire were excluded. In summary, it is the Bulgarians are the most popular, but unfortunately there are not many. The second is the Slavs, but as the main ethnic group of the Russian Empire, the small life is relatively good, and the willingness to emigrate is not strong. Again, the Ukrainians, maybe the Ukrainian plains are too rich and their nationalism is not strong. Then there are a bunch of ethnic minorities, the population base is too small, there is no cultural heritage and so on. For this, the Russian aristocrats have not laughed at Bulgaria, they are completely collecting rubbish. What's the use of a bunch of illiterate farmers? Beginning with the Great Migration, until now, the total number of immigrants from the Russian Empire to Bulgaria has exceeded 250,000, but the quality of the population is surprisingly low. According to the statistics of the Immigration Bureau, the per capita literate number is less than 20! However, Ferdinand is very satisfied with this. It is good to be illiterate, and his mind is simple, and it is easy to fool and brainwash. Just tell them that they are Bulgarians, and they can get an extra piece of bread. Then they are all Bulgarians. Who dares to say they are not? They will worry about you! The officials of the immigration department are the most experienced in this issue. As long as a gossip is released, and after a piece of bread is distributed every day, the Bulgarian people suddenly grow inexplicably! You must know that Ferdinand did not open a charity hall, and the Bulgarian government is not a charitable organization. All the expenses of immigration are paid by the government in advance, and later are required to be repaid by individuals themselves, including interest! But if you are Bulgarian, you only need to pay back half, and the interest is waived! You must know that the cost of immigration is not a small amount, and the resettlement fee of the Bulgarian government is added, and interest is included. This figure is even more frightening. If you are an ordinary worker, if you work hard for 5 years without eating or drinking, you can pay back! Knowing this news, everyone is even more afraid to reveal their original ethnicity, for fear of being charged for immigration fees! It's better for Bulgarians. You only need to pay half of the immigration fee, and you don't need to pay interest. 10% of your salary is deducted every month, which can be paid back slowly. Once you join Bulgarian citizenship, you will be exempted. Tell a lie 1,000 times, and it will become the truth. Anyway, when the next generation rises, it will be a Bulgarian with real gold. Although many people don't understand why they do this, at the insistence of Ferdinand, being Bulgarian was still implemented as a national policy! Just kidding! After more than 10 or 20 years, you will know the benefits of having more major ethnic groups. Chapter 104, Population and Number 039 Trade and Number 039. Is there any better assimilation in the world than them? They speak the same language, have similar cultural customs, and have no national consciousness. I told them that their ancestors belonged to a family, and I believed them! It's a big deal to tamper with historical data and fabricate a batch of evidence. Anyway, Ferdinand has seen many experts and professors who faked in his previous life, so there is no pressure on this! What are you afraid of low quality? It's okay, we can militarize management and let them know the rules! What are you afraid of being illiterate? It's okay, I can open a literacy class and learn slowly! Now that it is necessary to recruit mining workers, Butler Karl immediately thought of Count Paul. Anyway, 20,000 miners are impossible to get together in Bulgaria. If you stay at home for a long time these days, the aunts and uncles of the street office will come to do ideological work for you, and they will also be very enthusiastic about introducing you to jobs. Don't worry about not having a job, building bridges and roads, or going to construction sites. These places are all short of people! It doesn't matter if you can't do what you want, you can also mobilize your family to continue to do ideological work, and work enthusiastically! This is also a pioneering work of Ferdinand. Anyway, it doesn't cost much, just manage the meals, and there is an additional ideological education working group! Butler Karl and Count Paul are also old acquaintances, and they have a good relationship with each other, so they go straight to the topic. Paul, I came here today to ask for your help. Butler Karl now serves as Ferdinand's palace minister. He has a very special position in Bulgaria. When he heard that he needed help, Count Paul said suspiciously, "Oh, what is it? Your palace minister, do you need my help? You are the only one who can help me with this task. I need 20,000 miners now, and it's better to be in place before Christmas." Butler Karl said with a smile. After hearing this, Count Paul was in a better mood, and another big business came to his door, but he was still a little surprised and asked, "Why do you need 20,000 miners again? Didn't you only ask for 40,000 miners last year? Could it be that your excellency is doing something big?" "You guessed it right, it's just a few small gold mines." "How is it? Is there a problem?" Butler Karl said confidently. Hearing the gold mine, Count Paul's eyes brightened, and then dimmed. If it was someone else's, he wouldn't be able to get a share of the pie by virtue of his own status, but Ferdinand's property is still fine, he hasn't lived enough yet. "Don't worry, I'll get in touch with there right away, and I'll get it done as soon as possible without delaying the Grand Duke's business," Count Paul said in a big way. He does have this confidence. There are still many people in the Russian Empire who want to do this business, for the sake of profit. There are really not many things that the nobles dare not do! At least it is very simple to create a group of immigrants. Many farm laborers under the nobles are actually no longer wealth, but obstacles to their mechanization. Take the opportunity to get rid of them, and you can make a fortune, or you can cheat and make ordinary civilians bankrupt. There is no technical content at all! Anyway, everyone knows these things. Alexander III is estimated that he will not want more immigrants, so as to strengthen his influence on Bulgaria, and at the same time, it can alleviate domestic conflicts. Count Paul has no pressure to match up in this regard! St. Petersburg, just after receiving a telegram from Count Paul, Count Vronsky was busy preparing goods. As an aristocrat who had begun to decline, such a good thing was not his turn, but he couldn't bear that Count Vronsky's mother was Count Paul's cousin, so after delaying the relationship, he took a share of the pie. Since entering the 19th century, after the completion of the First Industrial Revolution, capitalists have risen strongly, mainly investing in industrial or financial profits, far exceeding agriculture. The aristocrats who have not yet turned the corner will have a hard time, and the income from agriculture has become more and more unable to meet their rising consumption. No doubt, Count Vronsky's family is one of them, and its financial resources have greatly lagged behind the transformed nobles. Despite his hard work in St. Petersburg, Count Vronsky has missed the best chance of entry. The monopoly group has been formed, and it is not something that a small and medium noble like him can shake. In order to maintain a decent aristocratic life, Count Vronsky has taken great pains. Now the opportunity has come. The nimble Count Vronsky quickly thought of a way. He did not force the untouchables of the fief to leave. That would be too inefficient and prone to accidents. First, they recruited workers in the name of the factory, then brought them to the port, coaxed them onto the ship, and took the money to leave. The rest is the work of the Bulgarian immigration service, and has nothing to do with him. The workers recruited by Count Vronsky were all recruited from remote areas, without much cultural knowledge, and they were all young and strong, completely high-quality labor, very popular with employers. This time was no exception. Count Vronsky chose the Sumy region of Ukraine as his target. At the end of the 19th century, Sumy Prefecture was still a backward country, with simple folk customs, and this year's food shortage again, it was suitable for him to start. When he came to Sumy city, Count Vronsky said to the servant, "Vis, find some local snakes, sir, I have something to do with them." After hearing his words, the servant Vicky immediately understood what Count Vronsky meant. "Okay, my lord, I'll do it right away." After speaking, Vix left in a hurry. He knew that Count Vronsky was not a patient person, especially when it came to money. The cat has the cat way, the mouse has the mouse way. To find local snakes, Vickis is very experienced. Into Russia, taverns are good choice! In less than 2 hours, Vix brought the 3 local snakes to Count Vronsky. Count Vronsky glanced at the 3 of them indifferently, and asked in a positive tone, "You are all local snakes here, aren't you?" Seeing the pomp of Count Vronsky, the 3 of them knew that this was a nobleman. The Russian Empire is strictly hierarchical, and what kind of pomp is there for people of any status? The 3 replied nervously, "Yes, sir." Count Vronsky nodded, and then said lightly, "Very well, my factory needs a large number of workers now, and this task is left to you. Remember to be strong young men and women. The treatment, food and housing, 5 rubles per month! The number of people, the more the better. For every 100 recruits, I will give you 20 rubles, for every more than 1,000 recruits, I will reward you with 100 rubles. Questions? No. The 3 answered in unison. Count Vronsky waved his hand and signaled that the 3 of them could leave. It seemed that talking to them would be detrimental to his identity. The 3 of them didn't mind either, they bowed properly and left happily. Aristocrats, it is normal to be arrogant. If you really communicate with them in a friendly way, then there will be a problem. Chapter 105. Issuing bonds. "Hey, what do you two think?" "There seems to be a problem with this," said one of the taller men. "What do you think?" Luke doesn't understand. A nobleman is planning to build a black-hearted factory. No matter what he does, as long as we can earn the fortune, it is not something we can participate in anyway. The slightly obese middle-aged man replied, "Fatty is right, Luke. The affairs of the nobles are not something we can interfere with. With this skill, it is better to think about how to recruit a few more people and exchange for the bounty." Another person said, "I know what you're talking about, but it always feels weird. It's not easy for a noble to recruit workers. With their power, where do they need our help? And the wages are so high. Don't you think it's very unreasonable? Is it normal?" explained the tall man named Luke. After listening to Luker's words, the 2 were thoughtful. After a while, the chubby middle-aged man seemed to have thought of something. His face changed greatly, and he said with some fear, "Is he going to open a black mine? I heard that some unscrupulous capitalists are lying around. When people go to the mines, they always go there and never return. Then what should we do? He is a noble. If we promise but don't do it, I'm afraid it will be bad. If something goes wrong, so many family members will not tear the 3 of us apart." Another said, "It's not that serious. Most of the people who dare to do this are small remote mines with few workers. This noble gentleman has recruited a lot of people, and thousands of workers are making trouble. How can he really dare to fail? Once it leaks the wind, even the nobles can't eat and walk around." Luke shook his head and said, "What do you mean? Let's try to find someone and a place for him. Everyone has to take care of each other, and the more people the better." Fatty asked tentatively. "That's right, a few civilians are ants in their eyes. What if there are hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of people? It's impossible to overdo it," Luke said confidently. For the sake of the ruble and for their own future lives, the 3 of them called friends and encouraged everyone to go out to work. Thanks to the natural disaster some time ago, most of the food in Sumy is in short supply, and many people are worrying about their livelihoods, and the results are remarkable. In just 1 week, more than 1,000 people signed up. Count Vronsky was very cautious and did not go out in person, but only sent his servant Vix to come forward, in the witness of the priest, the representative of God. The labor contract was signed with the workers on behalf of Count Vronsky. In his opinion, he has not breached the contract! The contract does not specify the place of work, And the salary is not deceiving. You can also get this income from mining in Bulgaria. If it is not enough, you can work overtime. There will always be some ! Such low investment, high return, zero risk transactions are hard to find. In the eyes of Count Vronsky, the Bulgarian government is a complete fool. High-quality intellectuals do not want them, and they will pay a huge price for a group of foolish people who are not going to get away with it. If Prime Minister Konstantin finds out, he will definitely scold his mother. What does it have to do with them? It was completely insisted by the Grand Duke, and Ferdinand, who was usually willing to give advice, was very firm this time. He has an opinion, but he still has to implement it 100%. If you dare to discount, go home and farm. It's not that Ferdinand doesn't want high-quality talents, at least he welcomes scientists, engineers, and doctors, and is willing to pay high prices. But where are these people who are scarce talents? And I haven't seen you get a few here. The population trade is still in full swing, and shrewd people like Count Vronsky are still a minority. Most of the nobles also work part-time as loan sharks, and they used to worry about the impoverished pariahs. After all, Malang's manpower is worthless. Now it's simple: first squeeze the oil and water, and then pack and export the whole family together. No, immigrating to Bulgaria. You can make a fortune again. Although the old and the weak are not welcome, as long as there is strong labor. Ferdinand said that anyone who comes here will not refuse, but the price is lower. In the short term, the young and strong labor force is more valuable, but in the long term, it is easier to integrate with the whole family. After tossing for more than half a month, the Ministry of Finance finally came up with a scientific figure, at least approved by most experts. It is planned to issue a total of 200 million leva of national construction bonds within 3 years, with annual interest rates of 5%, 7.5%, and 10.75% in 5-year, 10-year, and 20-year terms. Are these interest rates high? In Ferdinand's point of view, it is not high at all. The longer the time, the greater the risk, the higher the interest rates. Naturally, even the risk of gold standard inflation still exists. Society is developing. The end of the 19th century was the beginning of the Second Industrial Revolution. Human wealth is growing explosively. Don't look at the low interest rate of international loans on the surface. If you carefully calculate other additional conditions, you will find that it is better to issue bonds. At the end of the 19th century, there was no saying that the one who owes the debt is the uncle. The most popular in this period was the axiom "is within the range of the canon!" If it's a bond issue, it's different. Most of it will be circulated to individuals, and for this part, it is really the person who owes money is the uncle. Find any excuse to delay payment, suspend support, or set up a complex process to delay payment. These routines have been seen a lot by Ferdinand in his previous life. Ordinary people are powerless to deal with a rogue government anyway. Of course, this is very bad reputation, and Ferdinand will not do it unless it is a last resort. After receiving the proposal from the Ministry of Finance, Ferdinand summoned the Secretary of the Treasury Kennedy and asked in confusion, "Mr. Kennedy, how is your treasury going to sell this batch of bonds? 200 million lira is not a small sum. It is equivalent to 69 tons of gold." It is 1.25 times the fiscal revenue of the Bulgarian government in 1893. It is not an easy thing to sell. Kennedy said hesitantly, "Your Excellency, I'm afraid we can't guarantee the sale." Hearing this, Ferdinand glared at Kennedy fiercely. "There is no way to sell. Why do you make this plan? Is it to make fun of me? If you don't have a proper explanation today, there's no end to it." Seeing that Ferdinand was about to get angry, Kennedy quickly explained, "Your Excellency, it is the first time that we have issued such a large-scale bond issue. We are not sure about the international reputation of the Bulgarian government. In order to solve the financial gap, what we plan is just an idealized number. How much we can sell is unknown. In fact, in the first batch of bonds, We only sold 50 million levs. Our Ministry of Finance is ready to negotiate with a consortium of banks from various countries, hoping that they will be able to act as an agent. Unless they are optimistic about us and can eat the next part, the result will not be optimistic! Chapter 106. Issuing bonds too. Ferdinand nodded. He knew the situation. I am afraid it will be worse than the Ministry of Finance estimated, he said without emotion. Well, I know. The royal family will take the lead in buying 5 million levs, and you can only find a way for the rest. After leaving the palace, Kennedy's mood suddenly improved a lot. With the support of Archduke Ferdinand, the first batch of bonds was sold by 1/10 before it was listed. With the leading role of the royal family, how can the capitalists express it, and then call on the people to buy, and more than half of the domestic sales can be sold, so the subsequent sales pressure will be much less. In fact, the news that the Bulgarian government wants to issue bonds has already spread. That is to say, most of the world is still in an economic crisis, which has restrained the energy of many consortiums. Otherwise they would have been sharpening their knives long ago. The scene that Kennedy envisioned did not occur. After the invitation letter from the Treasury Department was sent, most banks were dismissive. Are you all busy shearing wool at the moment? How much profit are ordinary commercial bonds? Besides, the current economic situation is not good. Who can you sell them to? If you buy it yourself, and you have the funds, why not buy the dips? There were far fewer banks participating in the competition for agency qualifications than expected, and none of the major international banks came. At this moment, the Ministry of Finance is embarrassed. Although there are more than a dozen banks in name, but in terms of strength, the top 3 are actually local banks. These 3 are very face-saving, and they are all presidents! They are Karl from the Royal Bank of Bulgaria, Viktor Ivanlov from the Union Bank of Bulgarian Industry and Commerce, and Nicholas from the National Bank of Bulgaria. There is no doubt that the first 2 are Ferdinand's properties, but the first is public and the second is hidden. In order to show the importance attached to the tender, Prime Minister Constantine also came to the scene in person. He was also dumbfounded, not to mention bidding, that is, all the banks that came to join in, and they were able to eat the first batch of bonds. Thank God! In desperation, he could only turn his attention to the Minister of Finance, hoping that he would have a solution. Constantine asked in a low voice, Kennedy, what should I do now? Where did these banks come from? How come I've never heard of it? Kennedy smiled bitterly and said, not only have you never heard of it, but I have never heard of it. I said it well before. Who knows why those vampires would suddenly stop coming, or instruct the National Bank to come forward. What's the bottom line? Anyway, let's get through this first, and then let's keep the government's credibility. Constantine was silent for a while, and then said fiercely, since this is the case, it is the case anyway, and there is no need to continue the negotiation, so let's just announce our conditions. If you love it or not, you can't count on it anyway. Kennedy gritted his teeth and said, okay, let's do it like this. If the subscription amount is less than 5 million levs, all will be eliminated, and I will not serve you. Minister Kennedy, who was in a bad mood, directly grabbed the host's seat and said straight to the point, welcome everyone, come to participate in the Bulgarian government bond agency qualification bidding today. The relevant information has been sent to you before, so I won't say more. To qualify as an agent is simple. All you need to do is meet the following 3 criteria. First, the bank that sells as an agent shall guarantee a minimum sales of no less than 5 million leva each time, and pay the bond funds to the Ministry of Finance in advance. Second, the agency fee, you can withdraw 1.5% within 5 million. And you will withdraw 2% for the part between 5 million and 10 million, and so on. For each additional 5 million, the handling fee will increase by 0.5%, and the maximum 3% will be capped. Third, other aspects shall be implemented in accordance with international practice. If there is any doubt, it will be resolved by both parties through negotiation. As soon as Kennedy's voice fell, the pot exploded below. Where is the negotiation? It has been completely determined. Doesn't this treat everyone like a monkey brush? Guaranteed sales are a little higher, that's all. This is a big deal, and it can still be done by combining several banks. The problem is that the rate is too bullying, and the international handling fee is around 2.5%. In accordance with Kennedy's requirements, the vertical rate and the agency is 30 million leva bond, combined, only 2.5% of the handling fee. Of course, the profit is more lucrative than that. If it is lower than this figure, it will naturally lose money. It's like telling everyone clearly, don't come if you don't have the strength. Now these few small banks, even if they want to join forces, can't come together, and each of them is more than 5 million. I didn't prepare in advance, I ate so much at one time, and if something went wrong, it might be over. Don't think that the 2.5% handling fee is very high. You must know that the exchange rate in the 19th century was not low. After selling it all over the world, and then converting it into lev, the operating cost of this series is not low. Only banks can do this kind of business. If other people do it, the exchange rate alone can make you die. Mr. Kennedy, is it too much for you to set such conditions? We can't accept it. Is your Bulgarian national debt originally a joke, just to amuse everyone? The representative of Klein Bank couldn't sit still, said mockingly. Kennedy did not get angry, and said with a smile, this gentleman has been thinking too much. Isn't the condition we set in Bulgaria to choose a strong partner? If you can't afford it, leave the opportunity to a strong bank. Well, after listening to Kennedy's words, the representative of Klein Bank angrily replied, Humphrey, since that's the case, then we'll leave. After speaking, he left without knowing his head, and even the representatives of several other small banks also left the table. The scene became even more embarrassing, but Kennedy did not regret it. You must know that cooperating with these small banks is very risky. If you accidentally run away with money, where can you go to find it? Now there are only 3 local Bulgarian banks left, and everyone is an old acquaintance. Constantine was not afraid of losing face, and walked out directly from behind. 3. You have all seen it, the outsiders have all gone. Now everyone is an old acquaintance, and the next problem will get rid of you. Constantine said, bowing to the 3. Yes. Even the old Karl was a little dumbfounded. Co-authoring is a shame. Before we even made a statement, we threw all the 50 million in debt to us. Karl glanced at the other 2 people who were under pressure, knowing that he had to go out on his own, and said with a signature smile, since Your Excellency the Prime Minister, you look down on us so much, then the 3 of us will eat it together, and everyone will work together to save the 10,000 bonds sold. Mr. Karl is really arrogant, so this batch of bonds will be handed over to the 3. Constantine said excitedly. Chapter 107, Sales. Kennedy was dumbfounded. Is there such an operation? Mr. Constantine is worthy of being the Prime Minister, and he still has this trick. At this moment, Victor and Nicholas, who were under pressure, also reacted, and co-authored it on behalf of us. That's all for Victor. Anyway, there are many capitalists behind the scenes, and the owners have also expressed that they want him to support the national debt. Taking it back to the East and the West, the sales of 10 to 20 million is not a big problem, and 1/3 of the share is almost digested internally. Nicholas had a headache, and the Bulgarian National Bank, on the surface, seemed to have a deep foundation and a beautiful title. His old customers died a few years ago, and new customers have not yet developed. It also has the Achilles heel of state-owned banks, with a rigid system and a disadvantage in competition. In terms of strength, he is not comparable to the Royal Bank. In terms of contacts, he is not comparable to the United Bank with a large number of capitalist backgrounds. This time, the 3 companies jointly sold 50 million bonds, and they were the most problematic ones. But the 2 private banks have supported the government so hard, as state-owned banks, they can't come out and drag their feet. At this moment, Kennedy also came back to his senses, ready to cut through the mess, took out the contract that had already been prepared, and distributed it among the 3. Nicholas is in a hurry. If this is evenly distributed, the Bulgarian National Bank will be in trouble. What is the level of the salesman under his hand? Can he still not know? If the state-owned banks were not supported by the government and rely on them to go out to raise deposits, it is estimated that there would be mice running in the treasury. With a flash of inspiration, Nicholas thought of a good way: just pull people into the water. It is better for the three families to take responsibility together than the unlucky family of their own. The involvement is so great that the government will not be able to hold them accountable. He smiled and said, "Since it is a joint undertaking, there is no need to sign separately. I suggest that Mr. Carr take the lead and sign the contracts on behalf of our three parties." Everyone's face changed slightly, and after thinking about it, they found something wrong. The Bulgarian National Bank is a public bank fully controlled by the government, and the possibility of default is completely zero, so it gave Nicholas a face, and the two sides signed a contract. Regarding the failure of the government to issue bonds to the international market, it was as early as Ferdinand's expectation. Without it, in 1893, European countries were suffering from an economic crisis, and the people had neither the intention to buy bonds nor the economic strength to buy bonds. The government dealt with it in a timely manner, and decisively transferred it to domestic sales, which preserved the country's reputation and did not give international capital a chance to take advantage of the fire. In all Europe, Russia is now the least affected by the economic crisis. I don't know if Wilhelm II regretted that he tore up the German-Russian covenant too early, otherwise the Russian market is now the best medicine for the German economy. Of course, Ferdinand thought too much. Germany in the economic crisis is beginning the Second Industrial Revolution and will soon be reborn from the ashes. Then they ran wild, and the United States, which was also undergoing the Second Industrial Revolution, surpassed the British Empire one after another. But now the Russian market has become a good medicine for the Bulgarian economy. Since the alliance between Russia and Bulgaria, the trade volume between the two countries has continued to expand, and now it is Bulgaria's largest trading partner. Now to sell the bond, Ferdinand once again thought of the bare nobility. Don't look at the financial resources of the Russian government, but their nobles are very wealthy. As long as a small number of people are interested in bonds, they will not worry about selling them. Bulgarian construction bonds were quickly hyped up in the country. Every day there is propaganda in the newspapers to encourage the people to carry forward the spirit of patriotism and support the construction of the country. In general, the effect is not bad, especially after Ferdinand took the lead in buying 5 million levs. Thanks to the substantial increase in the income of the Bulgarian people in recent years, there is still a slight balance in their hands. Deposit in a bank? In this era, the high fees of banks, for small customers, not so cost-effective. Buying government bonds has become a new choice. In order to increase the gold content of the national debt, Ferdinand also announced that the national debt can be used to pay taxes, but the interest that has not expired will be gone. This business is contracted by Royal Bank and Union Bank together, and accepts treasury bonds as collateral, and it is fully mortgaged, which is equivalent to currency, but the circulation is not very convenient. No way. In the age of the gold standard, Ferdinand couldn't even print more money, so he could only issue currency in a different direction. As long as Bulgarian government bonds can be freely exchanged for currency at the bank, there is no need to worry about not being able to sell them. Aranla is just an ordinary textile factory worker, working in the development zone and earning just barely. Her husband, Webet, is also a skilled worker in a machine shop and earns a relatively good income. Adding up the wages of the two people, after deducting the family expenses, there is a small savings every month. After a long period of time, it is already a considerable amount for them. Originally, I was going to deposit it in the bank, but after seeing the interest on the national debt, Irene was tempted again and was going to go back to Wybo to discuss it. After dinner, Irene looked for an opportunity to speak. "Dear, what do you think of the national debt?" "National debt? Why are you asking this question all of a sudden? Haven't you always been concerned with politics?" Weber was a little surprised by his wife's performance. Aranra explained, "Honey, it's different. It's not politics, it's just pure nation-building bonds." Weber, who was not very good at speaking, nodded. He hadn't paid attention to the news for a long time. In recent months, the machinery factory has always had unfinished orders. He has to work hard every day, and he doesn't know if it is a month or 2 months, and he has not taken vacations. Whenever he wanted to rest, the supervisor would come over to do ideological work for him, telling him that overtime work was only for a short period of time. Thinking of the considerable overtime pay, Webert finally persevered. Even so, Webbot still loves the machine shop, his boss, his supervisor, for nothing else. It is because the salary of the machinery factory is slightly higher than that of other factories, and the supervisor never deducts salary arbitrarily, even if he is arranged to work a little more overtime. The overtime pay is never less. That's enough for Webbot. It's a hell of a heaven compared to his previous work. He cherishes this job very much. Although he is a little busy, his income is high. Since he entered the machinery factory, his status at home has improved a lot, and he should always ask him to pay attention when encountering major events. Well, I'll go to the factory tomorrow to find someone to ask, and then make a decision. Webbot thought for a while and said, well, you have to remember, I heard that the interest rate of national debt is very high. Erinle urged again. Got it, Weber said wearily. Chapter 108, Little Man Webbot. In the early morning of the next day, Webbot rushed to the factory again full of energy. By this time, the workers had already arrived in 2s and 3s, not for anything else, just for the free breakfast in the cafeteria, so don't be late. This was another saving for the budget-conscious Webbot. And the canteen was pretty good, with plenty of bread, a small serving of vegetables, and the occasional milk. Thinking of this, Webbot is very proud. There are only a handful of factories that can provide 3 meals for free in the entire development zone, and even the whole of Bulgaria, and the machinery factory is one of them. After saying hello to my acquaintance colleagues, Webbot entered the cafeteria. At this time, it was the peak time for dining, and there were already many people sitting in the restaurant. After receiving a breakfast, Webbot found a place where no one was at random and sat down. News of the national debt spread very quickly, and in just a few days, it was widely known through newspapers. Even a group of technical nerds who deal with machinery every day were discussing, and Webbot, who was eating, was quickly attracted. Well, the Bulgarian people at the end of the 19th century had not yet developed a good habit of reading newspapers, mainly poor people. After all, the cost of printing in this era is not low. An ordinary newspaper is the income of an ordinary worker for a few days. Ordinary people all know about national debt, and they all listen to what others say. The specific situation is not very clear to everyone. I heard that the highest interest rate on the national debt this time is more than 10%, do you know? Said one person with high eyebrows. Really, Saddam, you kid didn't lie to me? The country actually pays such high interest, why doesn't it borrow money from the bank? Another asked suspiciously. Don't listen to his nonsense. A distant relative of mine works in the bank. The maximum interest rate on the national debt is 10.75%, but the term is 20 years. Repay the principal and interest when it matures. Think about it carefully. Is this still high? Another person said indifferently. When he heard Bush's questioning, Saddam stepped on his tail and became angry all of a sudden, and asked sharply, why is it not high? It's still more than 10%. Did I say something wrong, Mr. Bush? So what, Mr. Saddam? Have you waited for the 20-year national debt? What if you use money in the middle, or what if the government changes? I think it's better it is reliable in the short term, although the interest rate is a little lower. At least the risk is small, Bush said with a sneer. Saddam gave Bush Jr. a nonchalant look and said, you coward, what do you do without taking the risk? You might choke to death when you eat! It may be that they were too emotional, and their voices were too loud, which attracted the attention of the cafeteria managers, and a young man came to stop them. 2 gentlemen, please abide by the discipline of the cafeteria and eat in a civilized manner. If there is another loud noise, then please go out. Frightened, Saddam and Bush immediately apologized, and said in unison, I'm very sorry. We are too excited, we will change it immediately, never again. Influenced by Ferdinand, The rules of the machinery factory are very strict. There are clear rules about what can be done and what cannot be done. Once violated, the consequences are very serious. Don't think that what people say is very light. Please go out is easy, but it is difficult to come back. That also means saying goodbye to the free meals in the cafeteria for a long time in the future. Prepare 3 meals a day and take care of yourself, which is a lot of expense for them. Of course, you can choose to leave, but the Bulgarian workers of the 19th century were still very simple. They can leave their jobs for any reason, but they cannot be punished for their own reasons and violate the regulations, and they will not be able to hold their heads up in front of relatives and friends. Besides, the job in the machinery factory is very popular, with good wages and benefits. Top rank among all factories in Bulgaria. There are a lot of people wanting to come in. For this job, Saddam and George W. Bush both went through 5 obstacles and killed them from a group of competitors. A small episode just passed, and Webbot heard the news he wanted before he went to inquire. He thought to himself, it seems that the news of the national debt is true. At the same time, I want to clarify things even more. After all, the conversation between Saddam and Bush was too brief, and the canteen administrator interrupted him before he said the specific details. Under the circumstances at that time, he could not go any further. Asked. Weibot is a typical technical house. He is not sociable. He doesn't know many friends. Every day is a workshop, a cafeteria, a rented dormitory. Occasionally I have a rest day. At most I sleep in at home, and I have no bad habits. Now to inquire about the news. This can be difficult for him. Dealing with people has always been the most troublesome thing for Weibot, but what has been promised to the wife must be done. With something on his mind, Webbot was restless all morning and made several mistakes in a row, which caught the attention of the workers. You must know that such a mistake will be deducted from the money. Under normal circumstances, a skilled person like Weibot will not make it, not to mention the continuous mistakes. What's wrong with you, Weibot? Are you feeling unwell? Why don't you tell your supervisor? Take a 2-day break. You haven't had a vacation for a long time. Horkin, who was in the same group with him, asked with concern. It's okay, Horkin, don't you know my health? When did you get sick? Besides, everyone is working overtime. Who doesn't work overtime every day recently? Kuwait said with a smile. Workers in the 19th century were not as delicate as later generations. They worked 15 or 6 hours a day, and usually fell ill and took 2 days off as a luxury. It's not a serious illness. Don't see a doctor. For ordinary workers, a visit to a doctor is basically a declaration of bankruptcy for a family. Even with Ferdinand's labor protection law, workers have not improved much except for some increased income and increased job security. In order to earn more money, workers choose to work overtime voluntarily. Anyway, as long as overtime pay is paid, the government pretends not to see it. Horkin looked at Weibot, and it didn't look like he was sick, and he warned again, well, that's good. You have to be careful. If there are more problems, you will be done for nothing today. Hearing Horkin's reminder, Weibot reacted at once, and quickly retracted his mind. Isn't that right? If I make another mistake, I'm afraid it's really going to be a waste today, and I don't dare to take this Weibot lightly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109, The World of Little People. Weibot's abnormality also attracted the attention of the workshop managers. There are thousands of employees in the machinery factory of Nuota, and it is normal for a small situation. In such a situation, the managers have a wealth of experience. During the lunch break, Superivanov, the supervisor of Webbot, came to talk to him. Weibot, are you feeling unwell today, or are you too tired recently and haven't rested? Super asked tentatively. In the face of the supervisor's questioning, Weibot knew that he was in trouble. If he didn't explain clearly, he would probably be arrested. He really wanted to rest, but when he thought about income, he decisively gave up. Hastily said, No, Mr. Super, do you think I look sick? Super took a lot of Whibbit up and down and found nothing wrong. After thinking about it, he said, "Why don't you do this? You don't go to work this afternoon. The factory has invited a doctor for a consultation. You can go and have a look first." Hearing the supervisor say to see a doctor, Whibbit waved his hands in fright and said, "No, no, Mr. Super, I'm really fine." At the end of the 19th century, the medical environment in Europe, if you really want to describe it, is expensive, very expensive, very expensive, very expensive. It can be said that doctors are exclusive to the rich, and ordinary people can't avoid them. Although the income of the machinery factory is good, ordinary workers still cannot afford the huge medical expenses. No way. The industrial level of the 19th century was limited, the production cost of Western medicine remained high, and it was a seller's market. After Ferdinand crossed, it was not that he never had the idea of medicine, but he did not study chemical engineering, so there was no way to improve the process, and the cost could not be reduced. Don't say that in the 19th century, even in the 21st century, ordinary people in many places still shy away from hospitals? Don't care about major illnesses and minor illnesses. The messy expenses add up, and you can easily consume a month's salary. This is still not a serious problem. If there's a serious disease, an ordinary family will immediately face financial difficulties. Of course, Super also knew this situation, and explained with a smile, "Don't worry, this time, it's just an intern from the medical university, mainly to gain experience, and the diagnosis is free." Hearing the free, Whibbit's uneasy heart calmed down a lot, nodded, and left with the supervisor. In his entire life, he has never seen a serious doctor. At most, he has only been in contact with local doctors in the countryside, and he also wants to meet him, even though he is only an intern. But when they got there, they found that there was a long line of people from the medical room to the corridor outside. Whibbit didn't know what was going on inside. Looking at the opponents that were only increasing and not decreasing outside, he knew that it was not his turn this afternoon. After thinking about it, Whibbit decided to tell the supervisor to forget it. He was not sick anyway, so he didn't need to waste time. So he said, "Mr. Super, you see so many people, and I'm not sick, so I don't need to add more to the doctor." "Trouble?" Super looked at the flow of people and said uncertainly, "You really have no problem? You must know that now is a good opportunity. It is organized in the factory. If you are sick, you can treat it as soon as possible. The cost will be much lower than outside." "Team, not today, come again tomorrow?" Seeing the warm-hearted Super, Whibbit was about to cry, and said embarrassingly, "I'm really not sick. Mainly last night, my wife and I talked about the national debt, and I'm going to find someone to ask about it today, so in the morning a little distracted." Super asked, "Really?" Whibbit said with great certainty, "It's true." Super thought for a while and said, "That's good. You write a 500-word review to me, and this matter is over. Remember, the review must be profound." Hearing that he was going to write a review, Whibbit's face suddenly collapsed. With a wry smile, he asked, "Ah, can you not write it?" Super glared at it, said, "What do you say? Do you need me to remind you of the rules in the factory? Also, have you deserted the usual literacy education? The newspapers have said clearly and plainly, you can't read it yourself. Do you still need to ask?" After listening to Super's words, Whibbit was shocked and said, "It's all in the newspapers." After listening to Whibbit's words, Super became unhappy and criticized, "I usually teach you to read more and read more newspapers. One or two are not the same thing." Whibbit is now ignorant. After listening to Super's words, Whibbit was embarrassed and wished to find a crack in the ground to get in. Newspapers, the factory must order every day, and the management often asks everyone to read more and read more newspapers, mainly to facilitate brainwashing. The factory also has a special reading room. However, like many ordinary workers, Whibbit didn't think that reading and reading newspapers had anything to do with him. Those were only things that managers should read. It was enough that ordinary people like him could read a few big characters. The books and newspapers in the reading room have become the exclusive property of the management, and even if a worker occasionally goes in to read it, it is rare. so even though the national debt has been rumored, Wiebert still doesn't know that it has been published in detail in the newspapers. You know, writing the review has become a foregone conclusion, and Wiebert didn't dare to argue with the supervisor. After all, it was his own fault. He hurried back to work. He didn't want to have his salary deducted. It may be that the mind has been resolved, and Wiebert's work in the afternoon went very smoothly, and there was no mistake again. Wiebert, who was in a good mood, did not choose to continue to work overtime today. After work, he walked into the reading room with his employee card. This was the first time he took the initiative to come here. I borrowed the newspapers about the national debt in recent days and brought it home directly. Thanks to Ferdinand's compulsory literacy education, Wiebert has also learned common words and can barely read newspapers freely. When he got home, Wiebert began to study word by word, for fear of missing a word. It took over 2 full hours for Wiebert to finish reading about the national debt. The content of the newspaper is very sensational, but Wiebert's level is limited, and he can only understand a general meaning. Even so, Wiebert decided that he must buy government bonds to support national construction. Anyway, Royal Bank and Union Bank have promised to make sure that even if you need urgent money, you can exchange it immediately. The big deal is that there is no interest. In this way, it is similar to the nature of depositing money in the bank. There is no interest for early withdrawal. The Royal Bank is owned by the King, and the United Bank is said to be jointly founded by domestic industry and commerce. I heard that the machinery factory where I work also has shares in it. They are not the owners of poor money, and their reputation is reliable. After making up his mind, Wiebert was going to wait for his wife to come back and discuss it again, which one would be more cost-effective to buy. Chapter 110, Rectify the Bank. The Wieberts were quick to respond, and they were ready to buy the treasury bonds as soon as they were issued, and more people chose to wait and see. Generally speaking, the middle class is the vanguard of purchases. There is no way that the financial market in Bulgaria is so conservative. You don't even have to play with stocks. Apart from depositing money in the bank, it is difficult for most people to find other investment channels. You can't speculate in real estate, right? In this era of real estate speculation in Bulgaria, the custody will be lost. It's no surprise to buy government bonds. Nicholas found a very strange phenomenon. That is, the business of Royal Bank and Union Bank is very good, but the Bulgarian National Bank is not interested. This can't be done. Although he can't compete with Royal Bank and United Bank, he is prepared in his heart. For this reason, he does not hesitate to sell government bonds with his own face, and he wants to tie the three together, but the gap can't be so big, right? Nicholas thought to himself, we must find a way, otherwise the gap will still be so big, and the government will think that the National Bank is deliberately tearing down and not cooperating with the sale of national debt. There will definitely be a major operation on the National Bank. Nicholas's political sense is still very sensitive. At the moment of life and death, he decisively chose to hold a high-level meeting of the bank to find a way. Aren't you all very capable at ordinary times? Now look at your performance in treasury bond sales, and then look at other people's performance. Last week, the Royal Bank sold more than 13 million levs of government bonds. Even after deducting the 5 million levs subscribed by the King, there would still be more than 8 million. As for the Union Bank of Bulgaria, they also sold 12 million levs. What about us? I'm too embarrassed to say it. My face is full of panic. 888,888 levs. A very auspicious number. It's a pity that it's not enough for a fraction of other people's, and even if it doesn't help, you can add another 8 to me. Well now, even less than 1/10 of other people's. The reputation that the National Bank has accumulated over the years has been wiped out by you. You all give me a summary of the reasons, and quickly come up with a solution. Do not seek to surpass others, at least not too far behind. There was no sound underneath, and even people who usually didn't deal with Nicholas didn't dare to open their mouths. They were all stunned by the botched performance of the National Bank's treasury bond sales. It would be better if there was no comparison between Royal Bank and Union Bank, and there are reasons to shirk. Now there is no need to explain anything, and everything that has happened shows that, their incompetence! In fact, the excellent performance of the National Bank has attracted Ferdinand's attention. I have never seen such a bad one before. After all, it is still a state-owned bank, with deep roots, and even if it is surpassed by two rising stars in treasury bond sales, they have opened up. Sitting on so many high-quality resources, up to now there is not even a fraction of others, which is too much. What's more, after so long, no effective measures have been taken. Well, the measures taken by Nicholas were ignored by Ferdinand. The point is that he was dissatisfied with the National Bank of Bulgaria! As the only state-owned bank in Bulgaria, it doesn't even know its main responsibilities! Ferdinand doesn't care whether it is profitable or not, but you always have to go with the country's policy, right? Since there is no cooperation with government policies, then purely commercial operations should always be profitable, right? If the annual profit is hundreds of thousands of levs, it is barely profitable. But think about the government's annual funds of hundreds of millions of dollars. The interest of a big one has not been paid. The government has also waived its taxes, and attached a large number of preferential conditions. Ferdinand can't wait to kick it away! At a regular high-level government meeting in November, Ferdinand threw the problem out. Ferdinand, Prime Minister, what is your cabinet going to do with the mess of the Bulgarian National Bank? Hearing what Ferdinand said, Constantine immediately understood, since the boss has defined it as mess, of course, it must be dealt with seriously. Constantine also has no good impression of the National Bank, especially in the sale of national debt, which is simply slapping the government in the face! If it weren't for the good performance of the other two banks, he didn't know how to end it. After sorting out his thoughts, Constantine said solemnly, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, the problems of the Bulgarian National Bank have a long history, the management system is chaotic, the internal problems are serious, and they have rotted to the root. Taking the recent sale of national debt as an example, the three major domestic banks in Bulgaria have undertaken at the same time. Up to now, more than half a month has passed. We can compare the sales channel of national debt of the Royal Bank is 18.75 million leva. The sales of national debt of the Union Bank is 19.68 million leva. The sales of national debt of the National Bank is 3.56 million. From the above data, we can see that there are serious problems in the National Bank, and it is imperative to rectify the National Bank! After listening to Constantine's words, everyone was a little surprised. The sales of government bonds went smoothly. If it wasn't for the National Bank's delay, maybe the first batch of government bonds would have been sold by now. There was no objection to the rectification of the National Bank. They were all promoted after Ferdinand. The interest chain in the National Bank had little to do with them, so naturally they could not object. Anti-Corruption Commissioner Boris Christoph can't sit still. Since the anti-corruption campaign a few years ago, they have never had the opportunity to make big moves. After all, stability overwhelms everything during the development period. Now comes the opportunity. How bad the Bulgarian National Bank is, except for themselves, Boris knows the most. It can be said that a lot of problems can be found out casually. Your Excellency, there may be serious problems with the accounts of the Bulgarian National Bank. I suggest that while rectifying the bank, we will also send a special team to verify it, Boris said with a righteous face. After listening to Boris's words, other people looked complicated, and they all kept their distance from everyone in the Anti-Corruption Bureau. Without the sharp sword on its head, it could be cut off at any time. Moreover, the Anti-Corruption Bureau has a very detached status. In name, it is led by the government. In fact, it is directly responsible to Ferdinand. The Prime Minister's account is not bought by Boris! Ferdinand was very satisfied with the cooperation of his younger brother, and said very sternly, Check it out for me, Boris. The Anti-Corruption Bureau will investigate to the end this time. I don't care how many people or big people are involved, I will arrest them. One counts as one. No mercy. If anyone dares to intervene, They will be caught first. After speaking, Ferdinand glanced at the people sitting, looking very angry. In fact, Ferdinand's heart was already blooming. When the government was short of money, someone would send it to the door. No wonder the ancient emperors liked to keep a few corrupt officials. It was the only weapon to solve the financial crisis! Chapter 111, Inventory. Under Ferdinand's coercive orders, no one in Bulgaria has dared to disobey. All government departments are fully cooperating, and the cabinet is staring at it, just waiting for someone who doesn't have long eyes to jump in. Don't think that only Ferdinand is fighting the idea of these moths. In fact, the cabinet government headed by Constantine has long been eyeing them, but it is too involved, and it is not easy to start at the moment. Who says the government has no money now? Although issuing a batch of national debt can solve the urgent need, but the funding gap in 1896 has not been solved? Anyway, once the treasury bonds are issued this time, don't expect to be issued again within a few years. Bulgaria has a weak foundation and limited private capital. It is already everyone's support for the government to be able to digest the first batch of 50 million. Since the fall of the Stam government, the government has gained a lot of assets, and everyone has had a comfortable life for a few years. Now government officials have all experienced it, and anti-corruption seems to be a good choice when there is no money. With the support of Ferdinand, the Anti-Corruption Bureau broke out the fighting force of 12 points. The executives of the National Bank were invited to drink tea one by one, and then officials in the government were implicated in a group. Sophistication is prevalent everywhere in the world. The National Bank is no exception. The benefits are good and the salary is high. The work is easy and not tiring. It is really a good place to hang out. No, it's okay if you don't check it. When you check it, you will be shocked. From top to bottom, inside and out, there are people everywhere. If that's the case, it's not worth embarrassing Boris. Anyway, it's the government's trouble, and it's nothing to do with him. But the problem is that these related households are not fuel-efficient lamps. They are proficient in eating, drinking, prostitution and gambling, so it is inevitable that they will reach out to the bank. There is no doubt that this time, it was all packed up by Boris, and the relationship network involved later gave him a headache. This involves various departments in Bulgaria, including the Anti-Corruption Bureau. All cadres, large and small, can make up a battalion. How do these people deal with them? Director, why don't we report it, and we can deal with it as the top tells us to deal with it. The problems involving these people are not big or small. It's really hard to conclude. A clever boy gave Boris an answer. A note. Boris said helplessly, do you think I haven't thought about it? This problem is a headache for anyone to deal with. Now there are so many involved. How much is there? If they all have big problems, it's easy to catch them. But you and I both know that most of them are trivial matters. According to this standard, it is estimated that the government building will be empty soon. Forget it. Report it. After listening to Boris' report, Ferdinand was not angry. On the contrary, he was very happy. I thought that another vote would be arrested this time, but I didn't expect that the integrity of the officials in the government increased, and not many of them stretched their hands indiscriminately. Trivial matters, Ferdinand has no time to ask. No one is perfect. He is not a critical person. In contrast, Ferdinand is more concerned about how much income can be made this time. Looking at Boris, he asked indifferently, how many people are involved, and how much is the total amount of stolen money investigated? Seeing that Ferdinand was not angry, Boris also relaxed, soothed his nervousness and said, Your Excellency, the Bulgarian National Bank has all been involved, including those who have left, a total of 380 people, 6 people. The total amount involved is up to 35,450,000 lev. The criminal methods include direct floating, tricky pretensions, allowing relatives and friends to claim the space, illegal lending, and even using bank funds to lend usury outside for personal gain, and a series of methods! After listening to Boris's statement, Ferdinand became more interested and asked with concern, how much loss can be recovered if we pursue it with all our strength? Boris thought for a while and said, Your Majesty, This short period of time is inestimable. Some of them squandered it directly, some of them took advantage of their personal gain. They have made new investments and entered the enterprise. There are losses and profits. According to the new Anti-Corruption Act, all of these are within the scope of recovery, and the value is difficult to calculate. Ferdinand nodded with satisfaction. The more difficult it is to estimate, the wider the scope and the greater the amount. He admired his own wit a little, and revised the scope of prosecution for corruption in advance. According to the new regulations, as long as it is embezzlement, all property is directly counted as illegal gains. That is to say, if one person embezzles, all the family property is within the scope of recovery, and the investment income will be confiscated by the government. Ferdinand thought for a while and said, "Give the list of other officials with less serious circumstances to the cabinet, and let them deal with the mess." In addition, it is announced that the National Bank will be completely closed for rectification, and all loans will be checked to see how many bad debts there are! Boris really wants to say that these are not my jobs. After being in the officialdom for a long time, his political level has greatly improved. Since Ferdinand had spoken, he wisely did not raise any objection. When the big deal is handled by other departments, he has supervised it in the past, and the task is completed. Ferdinand didn't bother to care about Boris's thoughts. It was intentional. With someone watching, the efficiency of the officer will naturally be higher. On the other side, Prime Minister Constantine felt bad. After receiving the list, he had a headache. Why the hell does it involve so many people? In order to comprehensively respond to the problem, Boris submitted all the relevant ones, in line with the principle of killing mistakes and never letting go. Now, in Sofia's various departments, almost half of the officials are on the list. My friend, what do you think should be done? After thinking for a while, Chekhov said indifferently, "Constantine, you are worrying too much. Boris is expressing his dissatisfaction with us. Look at this juror, who has had dinner with the executives of the National Bank a few times, and it can be invited by the other party. What kind of problem is this? At most, it is a matter of personal morality. The place to eat is in a nightclub. If there is any transaction, it is estimated that they have already arrested people. Where will they report the problem to us?" Constantine pondered for a while, and said, "Well, it seems to be right. If these 700 or 800 people, big and small, are involved, we don't have to do it. We can just resign. But these people can't be used to it. Let's report criticism within the government. Then all of them will be re-educated, and then an exam will be organized. If they fail, they will get out of the way." In just a few words, Constantine decided the future of this group of hapless people. As for how much the list provided by Boris is wrong, he has no control, nor is he interested in pursuing it. The turmoil in the Bulgarian bank lasted until the end of 1894, mainly because of property inventory. It was the second largest corruption case since Ferdinand took the throne. More than 300 people involved in the case were all sentenced to severe prison terms, ranging from 10 years to life. There was another group of coolies on the mine. After checking out bad debts totaling more than 53 million levs, it can be said that the Bulgarian National Bank has been emptied. If it is a private bank, it can now declare bankruptcy. Fortunately, not all of these worms are food sacks in the lounge. Many people have good financial management skills, and their families are very wealthy, allowing the government to make up for the loss. Theoretically, a total of 98 million levs of assets were seized, but in fact, many assets have become shares in factories, or become fixed assets such as farms, and the cash is less than 10 million levs. Ferdinand's idea of trying to solve the financial crisis by fighting corruption went bankrupt at the beginning. Chapter 112, Big Wedding. Time flies, and another year has passed, entering 1894. This year, the Gyal War that shocked the world broke out, and the Japanese diocese started the road of counterattack perfectly, and finally joined the ranks of foreign powers. This matter has little to do with Bulgaria. It is too far away, beyond the reach of the whip. Apart from sighing, Ferdinand could do nothing, and transmigrators were not omnipotent. Is he still busy preparing for the big wedding? The king's wedding is not a trivial matter, whether in the East or the West. There is a set of cumbersome etiquette. It is certain that this wedding Ferdinand will make a fortune again. Although Russia's finances are not rich, the Tsarist family is definitely the rich owner, and for the sake of the nobles, dowry is also indispensable. With reference to his mother, Princess Clementine, Ferdinand would know about it. The cost of the wedding was a political marriage, and the cabinet had already prepared it, so Ferdinand didn't need to worry about it. In fact, the Bulgarian government attached more importance to this wedding than Ferdinand. Interest is always the best catalyst. After the alliance between Russia and Bulgaria, the economies of the two countries are almost integrated, and both sides have benefited. In order to express his importance to the wedding, Ferdinand directly sent a standing army of 20,000 to serve as a guard of honor. No one in the cabinet has raised any objections, and even Ferdinand's prepared remarks are useless. Alexander III, who is already in the dark, is in a particularly good mood these days. The pomp of Ferdinand is really in line with his identity. Directly taking out 20,000 troops as a guard of honor, such a large-scale investment, the cost is not simple, and few in Europe can take it out. That is to say, Ferdinand covered the sky with one hand in Bulgaria, and the two sides were politically married, so no one objected. Unsurprisingly, no one found out about Ferdinand's hidden purpose. As long as you are a normal person, you will not think that Bulgaria dares to attack Russia. It is simply a fantasy. Maria Fyodorovna later interrupted Alexander III's good mood, frowned and said, "My dear, it seems that we have not prepared enough before. At least the number of honor guards is too small. This will lose us face." Alexander III thought for a while and said, "Of course, don't worry. It won't happen. Since Ferdinand can come up with 20,000 honor guards, we can double it directly, and we can't let people look down on it." "But what about the cost? It's not a small number?" asked Maria Fyodorovna worriedly. Alexander III smiled and said, "This is an opportunity, isn't it? We can take this opportunity to show the world the strength of the Russian Empire. Little Ferdinand knows how to use it. How can we miss it?" "Show strength?" Maria Fyodorovna and Alexander III said with certainty. "Yes, I can bet that if the Bulgarian army performs well this time, Bulgaria's right to speak in the Balkans will be greatly increased." Queen Maria Fyodorovna thought for a while, then frowned and said, "I didn't expect a wedding, and there are so many things, so I can't be happy." Alexander III smiled, looked at Nicholas who was thinking, and asked, "By the way, what do you think of Nicholas?" Nikolai asked suspiciously. "It's time for the Russian Empire to show our strength to the outside world, especially our ally France. Germany is putting a lot of pressure on them now, but since we want to show our strength, why not make the scene bigger? Woolen cloth." After listening to Nicholas' words, Alexander III laughed and said, "Yes, Nicholas, you are grown up, but you are not yet politically mature. This is what Ferdinand did very well. Think about what is the purpose?" Nicholas was not yet a high-ranking czar, and he had not yet reached the point where he could just use his belly. After thinking about it, he said, "I understand. Besides cheering up the French, the main purpose of this demonstration is to deter European countries. But that doesn't mean we have to help the French take over the pressure from Germany." "That's right. We just need to deter Germany and relieve the pressure on France. There's no need to really start a war for an ally and avenge them. Now Britain, Germany, Austria, Italy, the four countries are moving closer to each other, which is not good for our diplomacy." Alexander III said earnestly, "But what does this have to do with reversing the four countries of Britain, Germany, Austria, and Italy?" Nikolai asked suspiciously. Alexander III rubbed his head and said helplessly, "Nicholas, your international diplomacy is not up to the mark. Think about it. Except that we don't want to see the alliance of the four countries. Who else is more worried?" "It's France," Nikolai said without hesitation. "That's right. After we have relieved France's pressure on the European continent, France will have the energy to dismantle this unformed quadruple alliance." Alexander III sighed and said after listening to Alexander III's explanation, Nicholas fell into deep contemplation. A small episode in a wedding could actually involve such a deep international diplomatic relationship. Regardless of how Alexander III educated his son, Ferdinand's wedding started smoothly. The brigade borrowed the road in Romania. Fortunately, there is no illusion of fake road cutting in Europe, otherwise Karelai would not be able to sleep. If there is a wave of the 60,000 most elite troops in Russia and Bulgaria, it will be enough for Romania to drink a pot. Of course, Ferdinand can only be ye about it. If he dares to do this in Europe, don't think about it. This armed training has taught the Bulgarian logistics department a good lesson. Fortunately, it is just a march, and the supplies are still barely supplied, and the insufficient parts can be purchased on the spot. If it was a war, Ferdinand could go home directly. Shortly after leaving Bulgaria, supplies ran into difficulties due to poor traffic conditions. In fact, the performance of the Bulgarian army has attracted the attention of the world. The neat formation and the super marching speed have refreshed the understanding of the outside world. Leaving aside the combat effectiveness, in terms of discipline and marching, at least he surpassed the Russian army, which earned Ferdinand face. For their respective purposes, this wedding has already begun to deteriorate, both in terms of scale and grade. It can be said to be unprecedented. Even after 100 years, it can still be talked about. Looking at the bill, the amazing expense made Ferdinand bleed deeply. The cost of the wedding alone is as high as 2 million levs. If this armed training is included, it will not be possible to do it without 5 or 6 million levs, which can produce 2 dreadnoughts. If it weren't for the fact that the harvest was equally astonishing, it would make up for Ferdinand's injured heart, and it would probably be even more uncomfortable now. Politically, this marriage consolidated the Russia-Belgium alliance, and at the same time deterred the Balkan countries. At least Romania was very hurt. Economically, the people-to-people exchanges between the two countries have been deepened, and Ferdinand has made a lot of personal profits. In addition to a bunch of valuable gifts, Princess Xenia's dowry is the big one. Although there is no real right, the mineral resources of the Grand Duke's fief are incalculable. Chapter 113. Open the hanging arsenal. After half a year of tossing, the wedding of Ferdinand and Princess Xenia was completed in the royal palace of Sofia, announcing the end of the wedding of the century. Ferdinand, who was dizzy and busy, just had time to relax, and before he could enjoy a happy married life, he devoted his energy to domestic construction. In the 19th century, with the rapid development of human beings, weapons and equipment have undergone earth-shaking changes. In the middle and late stages, front-loaded weapons have gradually withdrawn from the mainstream of the world and have been replaced by breech weapons. Since the establishment of the Bulgarian arsenal, in the past few decades, it has successively introduced weapon production lines from Russia, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Austria-Hungary. The Balkans have always been a high-incidence area for wars. All countries attach great importance to the replacement of weapons. Almost as long as the powers have new technologies installed, everyone buys them. Therefore, the Balkans are also a testing ground for new weapons of various countries. Of course, Ottoman Turkey is an exception, and the reaction of the nobles is always slower. As early as 1885, after the Bulgarian War, the breech rifle became the mainstream of the Bulgarian army. However, up to now, a large part of the Ottoman army is still equipped with muzzle-loading rifles, not to mention artillery. Perhaps noble officials think that the older the weapon, the better. This is more in line with the heritage of their old-fashioned empire. After all, in the 1912 Balkan War in parallel time and space, front-loading rifles and artillery all appeared on the battlefield. There is no dressing up yet, and there is nothing unacceptable. In order to unify the caliber of ammunition and the whole army to change their uniforms, the military committee has now made a quarrel, which has caused Ferdinand to have a headache. After all, he is just an amateur military enthusiast. Although he knows that many weapons are famous in later generations, he is just listening to the opinions of later generations of experts. In the end, there are many personal feelings mixed in, and how high the authenticity is a big question mark. As far as weapons and equipment are concerned, Any person in the military committee is more professional than him. After all, they all came from the EXE army, and the performance parameters of the weapons are not to mention the same, and they are inseparable. After all, the most suitable is the best. In the final analysis, this controversy is also related to the personal philosophy of the military's top management. There is no absolute right or wrong. The German system is the mainstream of the army in the world today. In the Franco-Prussian War, the outstanding performance of the German army, even with German armaments, has become the object of imitation by countries all over the world. In the army equipment, German equipment is the most widely used. The advantages of Russian-made weapons are that they are cheaper and more durable, easy to operate, and resistant to cold. They have always been the mainstream in the Balkan countries. Some people advocate a big mix, sifting through the equipment of the world's major powers, and selecting the best weapon combination. The last idea is very good in theory, but the feasibility is questioned. The compatibility of weapons is a flaw. The logistical pressure is high, and the cultural requirements for soldiers are very high. There are good reasons for this. The basic education level of Bulgarians, which are among the highest in Europe, can meet these needs. As for the later problems, the big railway and big highway plan just solved the transportation problem. Of course, this is only limited to defensive operations. If it is transnational operation, it will be miserable. Unless the logistics department is open, it will not be enough. In the end, Ferdinand also rejected the large-scale import of weapons and decided to be self-reliant. First get the finished products from the major powers, let the engineers copy them, and then carry out self-transformation. Otherwise the talents poached from European countries at a high cost will not be wasted. This has been 3 years ago, and even the replacement of the equipment of the Bulgarian army has been delayed until now. The arsenal, which has been burning money for several years, has finally achieved a phased breakthrough through the unremitting efforts of its engineers. As early as 2 years ago, the arsenal completed the dissection of the rifle process, whether it is Germany's Mauser, Russia's 1891 Mosin-Nagant, Water in Water, Britain's Lee Medford, or American Martini Henry, etc. There is no pressure to copy it. On this basis, the designers also opened their minds to design a rifle that belongs to Bulgaria's own. It is easy to operate, durable, and maintains depression. It has been well received by the officers and soldiers. Of course, in general, in addition to the slight difference in appearance, it is also slightly lighter in weight. In terms of performance, it is almost the same as Shui Lianzut, its copycat version, by Ferdinand shamelessly named Bulgaria 1889 rifle. Due to Ferdinand's foresight, as soon as the Russian 1891 Mosin-Nagant rifle was born, the intelligence department spent money to get one, brought it back, and then quickly copied it by the arsenal. As a result, the Bulgarian army had priority over the woolly bear. Pack up! Of course, there is no such thing as a patent fee. This can only be a crash of creativity. Anyway, Ferdinand is embarrassed to collect royalties, even though this year, weapon manufacturers don't take royalties seriously. Example, Martini Henry rifles, 19th century rifles like me. Even if everyone copied it, that's not right, and borrowed his ideas, but none of them have paid royalties. Just like the Turkish Martini Henry rifle, using the Henry rifle, there is no Henry on the inscription, not to mention the patent fee. In fact, as early as 1874, after the production of the Martini Peabody rifle, Alexander Henry went to the United States to negotiate with the Providence Company to ask them to pay the patent fee, but was rejected. The Scotsman replied angrily, "Home ... and then no more. Therefore, in the field of weapon production, if you want to receive patent fees, you can only hope for the integrity of the other party." Now we have finally made a breakthrough in artillery technology. The successful counterfeiting of the French M1897 75mm artillery, commonly known as the pungent French lady, has announced Bulgaria's cross-generational breakthrough in the field of rapid-fire artillery. Don't get me wrong, The M1897 gun does not mean that it was born in 1897, but refers to the installation. In fact, the French started designing it as early as 1891, and Ferdinand can't remember how long it took to complete it! Originally, Ferdinand had no idea of playing it now. After all, it is still in the design. But 2 years ago, in an accident, the Paris intelligence officer Le Goff accidentally obtained the design sketch of Miss France. Ferdinand didn't pay attention to it either, and threw it directly to the arsenal. Unexpectedly, it attracted the attention of artillery designer Gustave. At that time, he thought it was a major breakthrough in the history of artillery, and reported it to Ferdinand along the way. Chapter 114, Serbian Rebellion. After realizing it, Ferdinand suddenly realized that the rapid-fire guns of this period were not the later famous Miss France 75mm field guns. The Miss France 75mm field gun uses an anti-recoil device, and its rate of fire is also greatly improved, which can reach 15 rounds per minute, which is considered to be the beginning of a rapid-fire gun! When watching Bright Sword in a previous life, Ferdinand was still wondering what the Italian cannon was when he saw Li Yunlong attacking Ping'an County. I also checked the information on the internet, only to know that it was the nickname of Miss France after it was introduced to the East, or its imitation! What else to say? It was the main artillery equipment of the French army in World War I, and it was still used in World War II. Needless to say, the performance of this artillery was definitely leveraged at that time. Of course, it was immediately funded and built, and then the arsenal began to work hard on Miss France. Ferdinand also tried every means to go to Europe to poach people from major artillery production plants, and this made a breakthrough! After receiving the good news from the arsenal, Ferdinand immediately ordered the arsenal to fully produce and strive to produce 500 Bulgarian Type 75 field guns within 2 years! Well, Ferdinand squatted again. If it wasn't for maintaining firepower advantage in the next war, it must be kept secret, and he still wanted to make a profit by selling technology. The technical content of artillery is much higher than that of rifles. If there is no design drawing, it would take 3 or 5 years to imitate it at that time. To produce results is no less than a dream! What? To produce 500 Bulgarian Type 75 field guns in 2 years? Stoyan Khailovsky said in surprise. What, is there a problem? Chief of Staff Petrov asked suspiciously. Stoyan shook his head, and in a somewhat excited tone, he said with a little reminder, "No, I just think it's a little too much." Mr. Chief of Staff, you must know that the cost of the Bulgarian Type 75 field gun is not low. Will it be too much to produce 500 doors at one time? You must know that the current production capacity of our arsenal can only complete 12 doors per month, and we need to complete 500 doors within 2 years, and we need to expand the production line. Chief of Staff Petrov nodded, and after expressing his acquiescence, he added, "By the way, Mr. Stoyan, the previous field artillery production tasks will be terminated from now on, and we will concentrate on the production of Bulgaria 75 type field gun." Mr. Chief of Staff, I admit that the 75 type field gun is indeed a cross-generational weapon, but although other field guns are a bit slower, it's not completely useless, right? Just give up all of them, too. Was it a waste? Stoyan asked in confusion. Of course, you heard it right. The future will definitely be the era of rapid-fire guns. Now it seems that these guns can still be used, but they are destined to be eliminated in the future. If it is just a supplement, our current guns are enough. Yes, Petrov explained. Well, good Mr. Chief of Staff, I see. In this case, we can increase the production of 5 more guns every month. In this case, 2 more artillery production lines are enough. Stoyan thought for a while and said, "Oh. You are a professional in this regard. We all listen to you. Please make a budget report as soon as possible. By the way, we also need to consider the production of ammunition, which must meet the basic consumption of these 500 artillery pieces." Peter Rolf added, "Okay, I'll get it done, and in 3 days you'll see the budget." Stoyan shrugged. The sunshine in April is so warm and enchanting. A man lay quietly on the green lawn, basking in the sun, with his head down, freely enjoying the vigor in the sunshine and enjoying a moment of leisure time. There is also a coffee table next to it, with a set of ceramic tea sets on it, soaking in the fragrant longjing. There was a beautiful young woman in front of her, holding a cup of mellow tea in her hand, sitting quietly on the grass, looking at the sky, taking a sip from time to time. The aftertaste is endless. The scene looks so harmonious. This is the married Ferdinand couple, respecting each other like guests, plain and warm married life. ! Leisure time is always short, especially for a king who holds great power. Things will come up at any time! A maid ran over and said softly, "Grand Duke, Mr. Fu is here, in a hurry." "Well, let him wait in the lounge for a while, I'll be there right away," Ferdinand said helplessly, glancing at his wife. Ferdinand responded with a wry smile, unable to make another appointment. "Go ahead, I'm used to it," Xenia said with a smile, thinking about it is also in the emperor's family. Family love is a luxury. As ruler of the Russian Empire, how could Alexander III have less work? Ferdinand nodded and turned to leave. In terms of power and family, he chose power without hesitation. There is no way who would call him the Archduke of Bulgaria? The Balkans are known as the powder keg of Europe. If you want to gain a foothold here, you must be vigilant at all times. War may happen at any time. In this regard, Ferdinand felt more deeply, and history told him to work hard! The shadow of the world war is always urging him to lead Bulgaria forward. Looking at the sweaty Fu, "It is still spring?" Ferdinand asked suspiciously. Fu, so anxious, "What happened?" Fu said in a panic, "Your Excellency, our people have an accident in Serbia." After a long career as an emperor, Ferdinand has developed the ability to hold the top of Mount Tai without changing his face. Fu tried his best to calm down and said, "Your Excellency the Grand Duke, you know that our intelligence personnel in Serbia were infiltrated before, and a rebellion broke out in Serbia shortly after they were hidden." After Ferdinand nodded, he said, "I know this. I also ordered you to cause trouble for Serbia as much as possible. Didn't it go well before? Could it be that our hidden personnel were exposed and Serbia caught the handle?" Fu explained, "No, but it's almost there. You know our people were also involved in the rebellion and had a certain position in the rebels, and then we got in touch with the rebels and gave them back some support provided." According to insider sources, the last supply of weapons to the rebels was intercepted by government forces. Now the Serbian government has probably discovered our presence and even has evidence of our involvement. Ferdinand was shocked, and pretended to be calm and said, "Don't worry, aren't you ready to be discovered before? Anyway, with our relationship with Serbia, we don't care about this time." Chapter 115, Do You Want to Intervene? After listening to Ferdinand's words, Fu also calmed down. "Anyway, the relationship between the two countries has always been like this. How bad can it be? What if you have evidence? Does Serbia still dare to go to war?" Fu, who had figured it out, began to think about the next plan again. "His Excellency, what should we do with the rebels in Serbia now? They are in a very bad situation now. If we hadn't been paying and contributing, they would have been dead long ago." After thinking about it, Ferdinand said, "It was expected. They are a mob, and there is no hope that they can do anything. It is a surprise that they have been able to fight the guerrillas with the government forces for such a long time. Now that it's been exposed, let's just be explicit. The army will soon change its clothes, replace it with tatters or sell or give it away, and throw some of it to the rebels." Fu said forcefully, "Yes, Grand Duke, I know what to do next!" Originally, Ferdinand was not prepared to look for Serbia's bad luck now. They haven't completely fallen out with the boss, Austria-Hungary, and they won't take much advantage of going up now. Planting flowers will not bloom, planting willows and willows will make shade. Unexpectedly, under the butterfly effect, a small riot in Serbian history turned into a civil war. It's normal to think about it. Serbia is already poor, and was beaten by Bulgaria a few years ago. When I saw Bulgaria's military expansion, I didn't consider whether the finances could bear it, so I followed up in a daze, and then I raised taxes when I had no money. Unfortunately, the economic crisis has come again, another disaster for Serbia. The people couldn't bear it anymore. A spark ignited! It should have been suppressed soon, but unfortunately, the Austro-Hungarian financial crisis broke out again. The original loan was gone, and the government was short of money, delaying the suppression of the rebellion. Just happened to be targeted by Ferdinand again. Bulgaria, an international fighter, provided favorable support to the rebels. The rebels with a nurse would not be so easy to deal with! Even a group of rabble can't stand him with a gun. They can't deal with the normal army. They play guerrilla warfare and hide and seek. Who is afraid of who? After all, the rebels are the representatives of the toiling masses, and the base of the masses is unquestionable. The people who couldn't survive, it was their steady stream of new blood, which was consumed by the government army. There is no big record. Killing a landlord today, killing a noble tomorrow, and breaking a small town the day after tomorrow is still indispensable. Now is the weakest time for Serbia. If Ferdinand misses this opportunity, he is really unwilling. If you can give him a ruthless, do not ask for compensation for ceding the land, at least for 20 years, you cannot worry about the threat from Serbia. Wandering left and right, Ferdinand decided to hold a military and political meeting to see what kind of judgment the Bulgarian elites would make! Ferdinand is embarrassed. This is definitely not the fact that he was found to have sabotaged in Serbia. It was Serbia who destroyed free trade and seriously damaged the interests of Bulgaria! The military's opinion is purely based on military considerations, completely ignoring the influence of political and diplomatic affairs. To sum up, it is to fight and to take revenge! I don't know. I thought that the previous Bulgarian war was that Bulgaria was defeated and was beaten to Sofia? Now we must raise the army of the whole country to avenge the 9-year revenge! Ferdinand resolutely chose to ignore it. Hate that thing can't be eaten as food. It's a good medicine when you need it, and let it cool on the side when you don't need it. Anyway, it wasn't Bulgaria who lost last time, and Serbia is even bigger in terms of hatred. Now I should be the one who wants revenge. Looking at the government, the attitude of the military still played a role. At least give them enough confidence. Chekhov was the first to speak. Having experienced the Bulgarian War, he has always been a staunch anti-Serbian, but after entering the cabinet, he began to take a comprehensive look at the problem and gradually put aside his hatred. A bit of schadenfreude, mixed with an angry tone, he said, "If it's just a Serb, there's no pressure on us. Since they were defeated in the Bulgarian War in 1886, life has been difficult. Before they could recover, they caught up with the economic crisis, and then the civil war broke out. Although the rebels have been suppressed, and 2 consecutive years of turmoil, now Serbia can be said to be the weakest period. The country is poor and the people are poor, and domestic and foreign difficulties is the best portrayal of Serbia. It is inversely proportional to our rapid development, and we have been left far behind in terms of national strength." Remarks. Before 1885, Bulgaria was overtaken by Serbia due to civil strife. Until the outbreak of the Bulgarian-Serbia War, Serbia had the upper hand. The Bulgarian army defeated the strong and completed the counterattack, interrupting the development of Serbia. The key issue now is the attitude of the powers. At least the attitude of Russia and Austria-Hungary is very important, at least to get their tacit approval. Otherwise, think that in 1886, all our troops hid Nis. If it weren't for the intervention of Austria-Hungary, Serbia would not exist. The result is that all our efforts have turned into water. Seeing that the atmosphere was not right, Ferdinand said, "No, our efforts were not in vain. Although we didn't get the spoils we deserved, we did a lot of damage to the invaders, didn't we?" Serbia has not recovered yet, and this is the biggest gain. Now everyone still considers it from a political and diplomatic point of view. We will fully weigh the pros and cons of the consequences of Serbia's actions and make the most powerful decision. Everyone go on. After listening to Ferdinand's words, Chekhov also realized that he had made a blunder. Although he said the truth, He could never say it in politics. I was embarrassed and overwhelmed for a while, and looked at Ferdinand gratefully, mixed with a bit of shame. After a while, the meeting was back on topic again. Next, Foreign Minister Georgi Rakovsky spoke. From a diplomatic point of view, the Serbian government is also in a very embarrassing position. After the outbreak of the Austro-Hungarian financial crisis, major banks have taken international measures. The contraction strategy has also affected Serbia, and the loan that has been negotiated is gone. The Serbian government found the Russians, and with the help of the Russians, they obtained a batch of loans from France, and took back the minerals promised to the Austro-Hungarian Bank by default and mortgaged them again. It was given to France, but it was done under the intervention of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but the relationship between the two countries also fell to the ice. The French forces entered Serbia, which made the Austro-Hungarian government very upset. It is said that Franz Joseph I was furious about it. Don't be surprised, the great powers in the 19th century were so domineering. I can breach the contract. But you can't. If you don't accept the theory, the canon is guaranteed to convince you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Did It? In fact, from the end of the 19th century to the beginning of the 20th century, Serbia has been in a very awkward position. In 1885, the King of Milan ordered the invasion of Bulgaria, but no one expected that it was defeated, and it was a complete defeat! You must know that the Bulgarian army at that time was a rabble, a group of militias that had not undergone decent training, and Russia had recalled the officers. The Bulgarian army was not even able to gather officers. Even so, Serbia was defeated. Under the strong intervention of the boss, Austria-Hungary, Serbia ended the war without paying too much price. But asking God is easy and difficult. From then on, Serbia will no longer be inseparable from the influence of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. If that's the case, that's all. After the failure of the Bulgarian War, Serbia can only seek the asylum of Austria-Hungary in the face of the eyeing Bulgaria. However, the Serbs have never been the masters of peace, and your gratitude to Austria-Hungary for sheltering you will be extinguished in a few days. Under the deceit of the Russians, they want to establish Greater Serbia, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire has become the biggest roadblock. This is embarrassing. The boss who protects his own is his worst enemy. The hot-headed Serb thinks he must change jobs, and then come back and fight it. This is also the reason why the Serbian government decided to fine the Russians after the Austro-Hungarian Bank defaulted. Want to know that there are many people in Europe who can provide loans? Small countries like Belgium, Switzerland, and the Netherlands can provide financial loans without causing dissatisfaction in Austria-Hungary. In this regard, Ferdinand can only say that the Serbs' talent for death is too powerful! Is Austria-Hungary good? In the eyes of later generations, Austria-Hungary is a foreign power, but the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the end of the 19th century was by no means the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the First World War. Chief of Staff Petrov said happily. So, the Austro-Hungarian Empire also hopes that Serbia will be unlucky. Can we do it? The Minister of Industry Wajeng Ivanlov shook his head and said, no. Austria-Hungary wanted to see Serbia unlucky. In the previous rebellion, they refused to help and watched jokes, but they didn't think that Austria-Hungary would like to see it. Let's make it big. They intervened in 1886. Not to mention that now that the Russian alliance has been established, it is even more impossible to watch us annex Serbia. When Wajeng's words landed, everyone fell into deep contemplation. At this time, the Chancellor of the Exchequer Kennedy suddenly opened his mouth and said, is it possible to carve up Serbia with Austria-Hungary? The big deal is that we will lose a little bit and take less. Everyone rolled their eyes. Just kidding. Don't eat meat, but you will get a show. Aside from the reactions of other powers, how to divide the spoils? If you take too much, Austria-Hungary will not agree, and if you take too little, It is not a good thing to be neighbors with the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Now Bulgaria is doing well. It is not that it does not have borders with foreign powers. The neighboring countries are weak chickens, and there is not much pressure on national defense. Once the border with Austria-Hungary, the good times are over. Think of the terrible world war, which will be forced to be involved as soon as the war begins. Ferdinand decisively throws this proposal out of the sky. Of course, if the interest is big enough, he also minds taking the risk. But Serbia is not worth the price in this era. At this time, Constantine spoke up and said, "It is unrealistic to divide up Serbia. We are still too weak, and it is too dangerous to be neighbors with Austria-Hungary." The Austro-Hungarian government is certainly dissatisfied with Serbia. The most important thing now is to find out how dissatisfied it is. Is there anything we might gain from it? If the Austro-Hungarian Empire needs it, we can cooperate with them and teach Serbia a lesson, just collect a little labor fee from it. After listening to Constantine's serious remarks, Ferdinand finally understood the horror of politicians. Many things are not as simple as they appear on the surface, and transactions can be done behind the scenes. If the Austro-Hungarian government is really dissatisfied with Serbia, Bulgaria is willing to cooperate with the Austro-Hungarian Empire to perform a play and teach them a lesson. Ferdinand estimates that all the old emperors will agree. Anyway, the unfortunate thing is Serbia. Even if Bulgaria can benefit from it, the biggest gain is the Austro-Hungarian Empire! After a meeting, Ferdinand felt very bad, and finally returned to the original point, the attitude of the foreign powers. This kind of uncontrollable situation is disgusting to everyone in power. Even if he was reluctant, Ferdinand sent a telegram to Franz Joseph I in his personal name to test the attitude of the Austro-Hungarian Empire towards Serbia. In Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace, the old emperor and Franz Joseph I have been in deep thought since they received Ferdinand's telegram. Serbia's little actions, he is very clear, many times in his view, these farces are very puzzling. You must know that the current situation is that Serbia is inseparable from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, otherwise, they cannot cope with Bulgaria alone. Ferdinand's telegram is the best proof. And the Austro-Hungarian Empire left Serbia, or the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the impact is minimal. In this case, it is enough to follow the boss and be the younger brother. The results of it, Serbs seem to be afraid of being forgotten, and they come out every now and then to brush their presence. Hooking up with Russians is nothing more than doing it secretly, but it is so obvious that I am afraid that it will not be discovered. Franz Joseph despises the actions of the Serbian government. Even if you want the boss to pay attention, you can't collude with the enemy. I don't know that Ruzai has always been the fastest to die. Originally, he was very optimistic about Alexander being able to govern at a young age. But he didn't expect to see it wrong. It was completely a crooked talent tree, and all the ability points were added to the infighting of power and intrigue. Franz Joseph could not decide whether to agree to Ferdinand's proposal, although he wanted to teach Serbia a lesson. Here comes, notify the cabinet of a meeting this afternoon! The result was not unexpected. The Austro-Hungarian government's patience with Serbia has been exhausted. Especially the slogan of Greater Serbia. Don't you know that this is cutting flesh on the boss? Rice can be eaten indiscriminately, but words can't be said indiscriminately. They must be taught a lesson. As the boss to discipline the younger brother, you cannot rely solely on brute force. That is the last resort. Bulgaria is willing to do it for you. That is the best. Langin concubine is interested, so the two sides hit it off. Now that Austria-Hungary agreed, Ferdinand did not hesitate any longer and ordered to prepare for war. To deal with Serbia, Bulgaria does not need to do its best. At least the Type 75 field gun has no chance to show its face this time. Chapter 117, Serbia and number 039:S preparations. Although he knew that the enemy's combat effectiveness this time was not good, Ferdinand still wanted to reduce the losses as much as possible. Regarding the issue of army command, Ferdinand did not intend to intervene, so it was considered a training exercise. When it comes to weapons and equipment, you can still make a fuss, And you don't need to think about artillery. Poor Serbia can't afford artillery shells even if it has artillery. Otherwise, what will happen to the rebels? Now the artillery equipped by the Bulgarian army has taken the lead. At the end of the 19th century, what was the army's cross-generational weapon other than rapid-fire guns? Of course, it is the first push of the Markin heavy machine gun. 1894 happened to be the time when the Markin heavy machine gun first appeared. In 1894 in Rhodesia, Africa, during the war between the British Army and the local Mate Belsuris people, in a battle, a British force of more than 50 people defeated 5,000 people with only 4 Maxim heavy machine guns. Dozens of charges from the Domtables killed more than 3,000 people. It was World War I that really made Markin stand out. At that time, the Germans were equipped with MG08 Markin heavy machine guns. In the Battle of the Somme, 60,000 British soldiers were killed in one day, becoming the death toll in the First World War. Most once. Since then, the armies of various countries have been equipped with the Maxim heavy machine gun, and the Maxim has become a famous murder weapon. Although we know the power of the Markin heavy machine gun, the arsenal can also copy it, but because the Markin heavy machine gun in this period is too heavy, and water needs to be added at any time during use, it is also prone to jamming. Once it is discovered by the enemy in advance, practicality is greatly reduced. At present, the Bulgarian army is only equipped with a small amount of equipment, mainly to train machine gunners. Ferdinand originally planned to launch the M1897 Hatchkris machine gun directly after the technical breakthrough. Now I don't care so much anymore. I immediately ordered the arsenal to rush to produce 300 Markin heavy machine guns, plus the ones already installed, so that each company of the main force can be equipped with one. It's not that I don't want to add more. The key is that the consumption of bullets is too high. Now the production capacity of the Bulgarian arsenal is so large, and the logistics will not be able to supply if there are too many machine guns. The most important thing is money. After a large-scale battle, according to the consumption of 50,000 bullets of a machine gun, the good guy lost tens of millions of bullets. This is all money. Fortunately, this time it was only a local war, and the goal was only to weaken Serbia's military strength. It was a preventive war. The staff estimates that the duration will not exceed 2 weeks. Serbia will ask Austria-Hungary for help, and then the scene can end. It may only be a day or two of real continuous fighting, or it may even be just a few hours, and the outcome will be decided. Bulgaria's war machine has started. The history of the Bulgarian war has once again appeared in the newspapers. Revenge has become the mainstream of the people, and Serbia has once again become the #1 enemy. Anyone with a heart knows that war is coming. The Balkans have always been a hot spot for wars. Since Serbia invaded Bulgaria 9 years ago, the relationship between the two countries has not been better. Bulgaria's big move is naturally hidden from the Serbian government. The young King Alexander Obrenović is now in a hurry. The troubles at home have not been settled, and the Bulgarians are coming again. No matter how arrogant he is, he does not think that the current Serbia can win this war. As soon as the emergency meeting began, Alexander couldn't help but speak. Everyone, Bulgaria's wolf ambitions are already known to passers-by. What should we do now? The Minister of War said angrily, we have to mobilize the whole country immediately and give Bulgaria a head-on attack. After listening to the words of the Minister of War, Alexander asked expectantly, "Oh, what plans does your War Department have? How many troops need to be mobilized to win this war?" The Minister of War thought for a while and said, "This depends on how many troops were invaded by Bulgaria. They now have 130,000 regular troops. Civil mobilization can also be carried out, and the invading army may exceed 100,000. Or even 200,000! And we only have 100,000 troops, and we have to divide our troops to suppress the rebels. At least 200,000 troops must be mobilized before we can defeat them." As soon as the Minister of War's words fell, everyone took a deep breath. For a small country with a population of 2 million, this is already a powerful force. The Chancellor of the Exchequer was frightened by the lion's mouth from the Minister of War, and questioned, "But what about the weapons and equipment? To arm so many troops, where are we going to get so many weapons? It was rare that the Minister of Finance did not mention the money this time. He knew that at this time, he could no longer care about whether the finances would collapse. If the war was won, everything could be said. If the war was lost, the cabinet had to prepare to get out, and he did not need to worry about it anymore. After listening to the words of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Alexander looked at the Minister of War with anticipation and asked, "How many weapons do we have in stock now and how many troops can we equip?" The Minister of War was silent for a moment, and said in embarrassment, "This alas, due to the insufficient funds of the army and the wear and tear of suppressing the rebellion. In the past 2 years, the weapon reserve has dropped to the lowest point in 10 years, and there are only more than 1,300 rifles, 2 artillery pieces, barely enough to equip a regiment. Even though all the amateur players are sitting, they know that no matter what, the army must ensure that each person has a gun. Looking at it now, after the nationwide mobilization, an average of 3 people have a gun, which is similar to the Russian army in World War I, and the combat effectiveness can be imagined." "Alexander," I asked reluctantly, "so what about buying it now?" Without thinking, the foreign minister spoke up immediately and said, "Our Ministry of Foreign Affairs has communicated with the envoys of various countries. There is no problem in purchasing weapons, but the price is slightly higher, and it will take a little time." "How high?" the Chancellor of the Exchequer asked habitually. "It's 5 tiers higher than the current international price, and they suggest that we buy front-loading rifles. They have a lot of stock, and they can offer a little discount on the price, and the time is much faster," the Foreign Secretary said nervously. "What is 5 stories high? Why don't you grab it? What breech rifle? Those junk have a fart." Almost at the same time, the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Minister of War issued a question. At this time, the Prime Minister said, "I remember that we also eliminated a batch of front-loading rifles before. Why don't we take them out for the recruits first?" The Minister of War retorted, "No, what use are those old-fashioned weapons? Isn't this murder?" The Prime Minister said calmly, "Don't get excited, our Minister of War can't kill people even with outdated weapons. First use them for training recruits, and then wait for the weapons to be bought back, and then change clothes." After listening to the Prime Minister's explanation, the Minister of War nodded reluctantly. Chapter 118, Serbia and number 039:S preparations. The Chancellor of the Exchequer came up with a clever idea and said, "If that's the case, can we recruit civilian weapons? Whether it's a shotgun or a rifle, equip the soldiers first. No matter how bad it is, it's better than empty-handed." Good guy. At this moment, the weapons and equipment of the 200,000 army will be available. Fortunately, the Minister of War is also a civil servant, and his military level is only half a bucket of water, otherwise he will definitely explode. A pile of messy equipment, logistical supplies alone can break people down! Alexander I nodded with satisfaction, and got the weapons and equipment so quickly. He seemed to have seen the scene of 300,000 Serbian troops approaching Sofia. The Minister of Finance interrupted his and said with a wry smile, "Now that the problem of weapons has been solved, do we need to think about where to get money? An army of 300,000 people is not something we can afford. It's okay not to mention military spending. When it comes to military spending, everyone has a headache. In the past, in order to suppress the rebellion, military spending accounted for 80% of government spending. Now that the army has doubled at one time, where will the money come from?" After pondering for a while, the pro-Austrian Prime Minister Radovan Bovic clenched his teeth and said cautiously, "War with Bulgaria is a last resort. Now we should think about it, use diplomatic means, and ask the Austro-Hungarian Empire to intervene. Even if it pays a certain price, it is better than going to war with Bulgaria directly." His opinion was immediately supported by the Minister of Finance, and he prepared for the war, but he could not fight, or it was better not to fight. Winning is fine, but losing, how to do? Or if the war is deadlocked, what should Serbia do? He thought maliciously that if Serbia really mobilized, Bulgaria might be the happiest. No need to do anything. Drag on for a few months, and the finances can drag Serbia into the abyss. If Ferdinand knew what he was thinking, he would definitely say, confident, that's right, this time it was originally to weaken Serbia's war potential, and he wouldn't mind if it could be dragged down without a fight. The Prime Minister is right, we really can't fight now, we must first settle down in order to fight against the outside world. It is really unwise to blindly start a war with Bulgaria before the domestic rebellion has been resolved. Minister of Finance at this time, the Minister of War quits, and the Serbian military is not easy to provoke. If they interrupt their military expansion, the Minister of War will also end. No, Bulgaria may attack at any time, we must prepare with all our strength. If we rely on diplomacy, if we fail, we will be slaughtered. Don't forget that Bulgaria is already allied with Russia. If Russia stops Austria-Hungary, we still have to deal with Bulgaria alone. Alexander, who was a little moved, hesitated again. What everyone said could happen, making it difficult for him to choose. What do you think of the foreign minister? How likely is Austria-Hungary to intervene? What about the attitudes of the other powers, and Romania and the Ottoman Empire? Is it possible to stand on our side this time? Alexander, I asked expectantly. The foreign minister who was named knew that he could not escape this time, and said with a wry smile, the Austro-Hungarian Empire's current attitude is very warm, and it has not clearly expressed its support for us, but it reminds us to strengthen preparations for war. Both the Germans and the British have expressed their desire to maintain the status quo, but they will not directly intervene. The French and the Russians have not made a statement yet. The Russians are now allies of Bulgaria. Even if they do not support them, it is impossible to support us. In Romania, Karelai made a move, and they dared not make any move when the Russian Empire's attitude was unclear, but they agreed to sell us a batch of weapons at a low price. The Ottoman Empire is busy dealing with the Armenian issue now. Wish we had a fight. Alexander, I said dissatisfiedly, this is the effort of your Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Can't you find an ally? Yes, I'm so sorry His Majesty the King. The foreign minister said it was easy, but in fact he was scolding Mother in his heart. What a joke. Am I causing the current situation? If not for the conflict with Austria-Hungary over the loan issue some time ago, would this happen? I don't know who it is, and I shout every day to build Greater Serbia, without looking at where those sites are. What's so strange about the Austro-Hungarian Empire being dissatisfied? Who is the eldest and who is the younger? Such a principled question. I have not figured it out. Now need to say hello, if Austria-Hungary is willing to help. The attitude of other powers is even more normal. When Serbia invaded Bulgaria, wasn't it the same? Our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, at any rate, also persuaded Romania. Although it is not very reliable, we have also supported a batch of weapons, although it also requires money. Not to mention the Ottomans. Do we still have a credit for their domestic turmoil? It's not like everyone didn't do anything to incite ethnic minorities to make trouble. By the way, we have an ally. Although negligible, it is still possible to wave the flag. The foreign minister said dissatisfiedly, in addition to such countries, Greece is busy wrangling with the Ottomans and fighting Crite's idea. Montenegro expressed his support for us and strongly condemned the barbaric actions of the Bulgarian government. Alexander, I just hummed to show that he knew. A Negro with a population of less than 400,000, almost zero industry, and a gate surrounded by Ottomans, is powerless even if he wants to help, and their attitude can be completely ignored. Looking at the boyish king, Prime Minister Radovan Bovic had a big question mark in his heart, wondering to think of ordinary political struggle. Isn't it very powerful? How can your IQ drop when you encounter a major event? Even if you shirk your responsibility, you must pay attention to your appearance. After thinking about it, he said, if that's the case, then let's prepare with both hands. On the one hand, we will make every effort to expand our military and prepare for war, and on the other hand, we will make diplomatic efforts. Let's try our best. Radovan Bovic has no expectations for this war at all. The dark heart left by the Bulgarian war 9 years ago has not passed until now. How is the combat effectiveness of the Bulgarian army now? He does not know, but he remembered that in the last Bulgarian war, a group of Bulgarian rabble who were temporarily mobilized, in the absence of guns and artillery, beat the Serbian regular army to the ground. No matter what it is now, it is much stronger than it was then. How much has the combat effectiveness of the Serbian army improved compared to 9 years ago? Anyway, he didn't see it. A small rebellion has been tossing for so long, and he even said that it was supported by Bulgaria. Even if Bulgaria gave them a few guns, but you are a regular army, you can't beat a few pariahs. Is there any reason for this? Decisively ignored. The Serbian army has been pressing the rebels to fight the truth. Chapter 119. The rebellion was quelled? Discussion came and went, and in the final analysis, it came back to the original point: money. It takes money to expand the army, money for weapons and equipment, and even more money for wars. It happens that the Serbian government is short of money now. Alexander, I asked angrily, how much do we need for the war? The Minister of Finance thought for a while, and calculated very skillfully. According to the expansion of the army by 200,000, the purchase of weapons and equipment will cost at least 30 million dinars. Note, the Serbian currency dinar is equivalent to the lev, which is about gold. 2.9 grams, 2.5 dinars 1 pound. There may actually be more. The monthly military expenditure will not be less than 7 million dinars. If there is a war, this consumption may increase several times. How much money is needed depends on when Bulgaria can be defeated. Faced with the blame of the Minister of Finance, the Minister of War decisively chose to ignore it. Don't watch him clamoring for war. In fact, the Serbian military is not ready at all. The so-called army of 300,000 is still on paper, and the Serbian army is now only 110,000. Who knows when Paul will attack? What if the war broke out earlier? Bulgaria is not a fool. It has to wait for Serbia to be ready before launching an attack. Whether it can win or not is unknown. How much it will cost, this can only be known by God. Anyway, he knows the situation of the Serbian army. According to the most optimistic estimate, when the expansion of the army is completed, it can be a battle. Looking at the silent crowd, Alexander I's face was ashen. After all, he had just been in power for a long time, and his prestige had not yet been established. These ministers still didn't give him face. Just like the current situation, he could only record it first and settle accounts later in the autumn. Glancing at everyone, he continued to ask, what plans does the military have? How long will it take to win the war? Seeing that he couldn't escape, the war minister bit his head and said, Your Majesty, the war has not yet started. We are not gods. How do we know how long it will take? Bulgaria has not yet mobilized. Maybe another 10 or 8 years. They started the war. Of course, this is just an analogy. Bulgaria is now preparing for the war. It is expected that in the next 2 to 3 months, the war will break out. The Prime Minister took a deep breath. He now regrets that he was greedy for power and did not step back sooner. Tens of millions of dinars are gone before the war begins. If the war breaks out, I am afraid that there will be no 1 or 2 million that will not be able to fight. You must know that in the last Bulgarian war, Serbia's military expenditure was only 60 to 70 million dinars. The main reason was that the defeat was too fast, and the duration of the war was too short to do national mobilization. Asked, so, to ensure safety, we have to prepare 200 million dinars? The Minister of War said affirmatively, yes. The Prime Minister did not buy it, and said in a very firm tone, you know this is impossible. Everyone knows exactly how the government's finances are. If it is 10 to 20 million, it can barely make up for it. 200 million dinars, this is our fiscal revenue for 5 years. It's not what we want to be able to take out. Your military must find a way to keep military spending down. The Minister of War thought for a while and said, I also know that the government is in financial difficulties now, but you all know that our army's combat effectiveness is not as good as Bulgaria's, and it is difficult to win without superior strength. Therefore, the number of troops cannot be reduced, and daily training cannot be reduced. We have lowered the standard of weapons and equipment. The only way is to shorten the war time. Now we can only speed up the mobilization and start the war before the Bulgarian mobilization. The words of the Minister of War, except for King Alexander I, were not heard by anyone else. It's not a strategy at all. Just hope that Bulgaria will be foolish. The Prime Minister sighed and said fiercely, 100 million dinars. This is the highest limit. We can't come up with more than this number. The Minister of War was shocked. This price reduction is too harsh. Directly halved, and said angrily, no, there is not enough military spending. What are we going to fight? The Prime Minister said coldly, just take people's lives. From now on, the government will stop all expenditures and put all funds into the war. This is already our best effort. If we can't win, then the government will declare bankruptcy. In addition, the national mobilization will be carried out immediately, recruiting all young men over the age of 15 and under the age of 60 to join the army, and select 200,000 people to join the regular army, and the rest will be reserved as reservists. Alexander I couldn't sit still, he was desperately trying, and you can imagine that once the war failed, his throne would definitely be over. His father, the King of Milan, is the best example. He hesitated and said, Prime Minister, should we think about it and use diplomatic means? No matter whether we win or lose this battle, our vitality will be greatly damaged. The Prime Minister explained, Your Majesty, we will fight for it, but we can't relax our preparations. Only when the Bulgarians see our determination will they return to the negotiating table. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out to be just a deterrent. Jong is still old and spicy. They dare not think about it. If they really want to do this, what will the consequences be? To know that the rebellion in the country has not been quelled yet? Serbia began the craziest mobilization, and the whole country was in a state of turmoil. There were long queues at each recruitment point. Fortunately, this is the Balkans, and the people are used to war. Folks also have the habit of hiding guns. Fathers, sons and brothers bring their own equipment and join the army at the same time to join the sacred mission of defending the family and the country. The suppressed rebels were the first to suffer. The government army began to attack regardless of casualties, and the artillery shells were vented to their positions without money. The usual way of drilling ravines is no longer feasible. The government army has become ruthless, and directly fires and burns the mountain. If it cannot be tempered, the rebels who are rampant for a while are beaten and flee. The rebels were suppressed, but the Minister of War could not laugh. The losses were too heavy. Within a week, 6,000 soldiers were killed and more than 20,000 were injured. Most of them were minor injuries, and they could recover. Although the victory was brilliant and more than 30,000 rebels were killed, he was still not happy. This was a civil war. Before the war with Bulgaria began, more than 10,000 people were forced to withdraw from the battle. Veterans with combat experience are not comparable to new recruits who have just joined the army. The civil strife was suppressed, and Alexander I was deeply relieved. The civil war lasted for 2 years. Serbia lost at least 200,000 people and spent 50 million dinars. The economic loss is even more incalculable. But Alexander didn't know. Although the government army suffered a lot of casualties, the military chose to hide the loss in order to report the good news and not the bad news. Because of being attracted by Bulgaria, everyone ignored the rebel leader intentionally or unintentionally, which left hidden dangers for the future. Chapter 120, The Reaction of the Powers. At the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna, Franz Joseph I is holding a cabinet meeting to discuss how Austria-Hungary should deal with the war in Serbia and Bulgaria next. Your Majesty, the Serbs already know that they are in a hurry. It seems that they are not sure about this war. Foreign Minister Roman Hobbins Taklamati said gloatingly. This is normal. It has only been 9 years since the last Bulgarian war, and Serbia has not recovered its strength yet. Bulgaria has become even stronger, and the gap between the two sides is too great. This war is simply impossible to fight. The Minister of War laughed. Say you mean, if we don't intervene, Serbia will fail this time? The Prime Minister asked with interest. Judging purely from a military point of view, I can't think of how Serbia could win. Of course, if there are other countries participating, maybe it's possible, the Minister of War said affirmatively. This may be almost non-existent. The major powers are restraining each other, even if they support Serbia, but other countries except us have limited power in the Balkans and do not have the strength to intervene. The Foreign Secretary added. The Prime Minister asked suspiciously, what about the Ottoman Empire? Their strength in the Balkans is not small. If they want to intervene, it is still possible? The Minister of Foreign Affairs thought for a while and said, the Ottoman Empire is now too busy to take care of itself. Some time ago, the issue of their massacre of Armenians has not been resolved, and the Sultan has rejected our good intentions! The Russians also invited countries to join forces to intervene, but we refused. Even if the Ottomans want to support Serbia, consider whether the Russian Empire will join in. In fact, apart from us now, basically no other country will directly take action. By the way, Romania seems to have some ideas, but Kerala is too timid. Unless we are willing to come forward to contain the Russians, they will not dare to intervene. Franz Joseph I seemed interested in the words of the foreign minister and asked, what would happen if we contained the Russian Empire and Romania entered the war? The Minister of War thought for a while and said, if Romania and Serbia can be fully united, then this war has to be fought. Franz Joseph I asked in surprise, oh, has Bulgaria grown to this point? In fact, Serbia is now half crippled, and the country is in a mess. The rebellion has just been quelled, and the defense is acceptable, and there is no ability to take the initiative. If Romania participates in the war now, it is basically a one-on-one battle with Bulgaria, and Serbia can help at most contain 20,000 or 30,000 troops. Explained the Minister of War. The Foreign Minister asked incredulously, isn't Serbia already expanding its army? It is said that it is a nationwide mobilization. They plan to mobilize 300,000 people. Even if there is not much combat power, it can't be stopped by the number of 20,000 to 30,000 Bulgarian troops, right? The Minister of War shook his head and said, no, Mr. Roman. If they are only used for guarding, under the call of the righteousness of defending the home and the country, they may still have some fighting power. If they are active, maybe they will collapse when they start a war. An army that does not even have a gun for each soldier may not even have enough ammunition to support a major battle. The combat effectiveness can be imagined. At this time, the Minister of Finance said, the Minister of War is right. The Serbian government's finances are very bad, and now it has no money. The army of 300,000 people, whether it is weapons, equipment or military salaries, they can't afford it. Franz Joseph I felt puzzled that the situation in Serbia was much worse than he thought. In this case, why are you so arrogant to establish a greater Serbia? Don't you know that the Bosnia and Herzegovina region is already the meat in the mouth of the boss? Isn't it courting death when he publicly announces that he wants to grab food from the tiger's mouth? He thought about it and said, forget it. Since the Serbs are so clueless, let Bulgaria teach them a bloody lesson. Tell the Bulgarians to do as agreed. The army must also be prepared, and the show must be a complete set, so that no one can see the flaws. Russian Empire, Alexander III who is on tour is not good now. The crisis in the Near East has not yet been resolved, and Ottoman Turkey does not see any sign of surrendering. The Gyal War in the Far East has broken out again, which has attracted his attention again. Now Bulgaria, this little brother, seems to be planning to do something again. Alexander III asked unhappily, what do you think of this conflict between Bulgaria and Serbia? The Prime Minister smiled and said, the Bulgarians did not ask us for help this time, they just wanted us to show solidarity internationally, and it seems they are confident. Of course, this has something to do with the rapid development of Bulgaria in recent years. They can't stand it anymore and want to show their strength. The conflict between Bulgaria and Serbia has a long history, and the two sides have long been incompatible with each other. It is also expected that a war will break out between them. Just didn't expect it to be so early. Alexander III looked at the confident Crown Prince and asked, what do you think of Nicholas? Crown Prince Nikolai said with a smile, Ferdinand's eyes are still so vicious. Serbia is at its weakest now. Taking the opportunity to fall, he intends to abolish this opponent. Alexander III smiled and nodded, motioning him to continue. The future Nicholas II was slightly surprised and continued, "The current international situation is very beneficial to Bulgaria. The Austro-Hungarian Empire has just passed through the financial crisis, and it is unlikely to send troops to intervene directly. The Ottoman Empire is trapped in the crisis in the Near East, and is regarded as deadly by the major powers. Britain, France and Germany have limited power in the Balkans, saying they can't come out for irrelevant Serbia. After eliminating external interference, Serbia is not an opponent at all, but once Bulgaria wins, the Austro-Hungarian Empire will definitely interfere." Have they reached an agreement? Alexander III smiled and said, "Yes. Although Serbia is Austria-Hungary's younger brother, it does not mean that there is no contradiction between the two sides." The young king of Serbia uses the establishment of Greater Serbia as a slogan all day long, and Vienna will definitely not be satisfied. If possible, Vienna would not mind teaching Serbia a lesson and let them know that the sky is high. Ferdinand should have reached a tacit understanding with them, and even this war may be secretly planned by the old fox Joseph. The political methods of the Hardenberg family are the best in the world. Presumably soon, Serbia will be forced to submit to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Chapter 121, Preparation. In the previous part of the remarks, the exchange rate was mistaken by a decimal point. 1 lev equals 1 dinar equals 1 lei equals 1 franc 0.29 grams of gold, and now it has been changed. In international diplomacy, as long as you judge the ownership of interests, in the hearts of big people, you can roughly infer the context, and the truth is often not important. Ferdinand believed that the secret deal between himself and Austria-Hungary was so inseparable from what was speculated by Alexander III! Crown Prince Nicholas took a deep breath. He obviously couldn't do the same thing as Alexander III, and said very worriedly, "Does the transaction between Bulgaria and Austria-Hungary mean that their strategic change will affect the what about us?" Alexander III asked back, "What do you think, Nicholas?" "I want to hear your own judgment." Crown Prince Nicholas pondered for a moment, then said, "I think Bulgaria's strategy has not changed from beginning to end. Ferdinand's goal is still the Ottoman Empire. Although the Ottoman Empire has fallen, it is not the current Bulgaria that can challenge of. The contradiction between Bulgaria and Serbia is deeper than the contradiction between Germany and France. There is no possibility of easing. There must be a battle between Bulgaria and Serbia. Now Vienna wants to teach the disobedient Serbs a lesson, and the goals of the Bulgarians hit it off. Ferdinand intends to hit the ground running. But that's all. Austria-Hungary can't watch Bulgaria crippling Serbia, let alone annexing it. Once Austria-Hungary intervenes, the war will stop. Ferdinand didn't ask us for help, which means he's ready. For us, the impact doesn't seem to be that big. If Ferdinand listened to Nicholas' judgment, he would be shocked. Is this still the incompetent Nicholas II in the history books? Think about it too. The decline of the Russian Empire began with the Russo-Japanese War. In the first 10 years of Nicholas II's reign, this huge empire was still functioning normally. How could a czar who mastered this huge empire, an emperor who could suppress the aristocrats and capitalists at home, an emperor who had the support of the peasant class even after being overthrown, how could he be an idiot? Alexander III said with a smile, "Nicholas, your judgment is right. But this is also our chance." In 1886, Austria-Hungary intervened in the Bulgarian War, and many Bulgarians are still brooding. Presumably after this time, their resentment will be deeper. Serbia didn't pay the price last time, and it's hard to say this time. Once Austria-Hungary's intervention doesn't satisfy them, it's estimated that they won't read Vienna's good. Our opportunity has also come to provoke their civil conflicts. Even if Serbia has completely fallen to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Joseph cannot be easily swallowed. The Prime Minister said in surprise, "Your Majesty, Austria-Hungary has ambitions to annex Serbia, so should we intervene in this war, or else?" Nikolai interrupted the Prime Minister words, "No need. Serbia is not so easy to swallow. The British will not let Austria-Hungary dominate the Balkans, and even their allies, the Germans, will probably object. Our strategic focus is now the Far East, and Bulgaria is enough for a single nail in the Balkans. There is no need to involve too much energy in the short term. Alexander III thought for a while and said, Nicola is right, we don't need to intervene now. Even if I stopped this war, Serbia would not be able to come to us. Unless we are willing to go to war with Austria-Hungary for a Serbia. Otherwise, once Joseph's patience runs out, all our investment in Serbia will be lost. The different opinions at the top of the Russian government are also caused by the different strategies advocated by factions within the Russian Empire. The European faction represented by the Prime Minister and the Far Eastern faction headed by Crown Prince Nicholas. The European faction wants to expand in the Balkans, then it entered the Mediterranean, so they supported the intervention in the Bulgarian War. The Far East believed that the Balkans were complicated and that Russia would be boycotted by Britain, Germany, Austria, and Italy if it wanted to enter the Mediterranean. Back to Europe. From a strategic point of view, Russia's implementation of the Far East plan is correct, and the European powers are too powerful to make breakthroughs. Even if it fails in the Russo-Japanese War, it cannot be said that the Far East strategy is a mistake. It can only be regarded as a mistake in execution. In fact, Russia's harvest in the East is still very rich. The vast territory and rich resources have laid the foundation for the rise of the Soviet Union in later generations. If it weren't for greed, the Russian Empire would not have fallen into the quagmire of the Balkans and continued to implement the Far East plan, and world history would be rewritten. It is estimated that Crown Prince Nicholas, who is now opposed to interfering in the Bulgarian War, would never have dreamed that he would start a world war for a Serbia that could be abandoned, and eventually destroy his empire. Ferdinand, who had just sent away the Russian ambassador, Count Paul, is in a good mood now. There was no accident, the Russians are willing to cooperate with this scene, and now it can be said that the victory is in hand! Is the Constantine government ready? Ferdinand asked. Constantine said without hesitation, Grand Duke, we have made all the preparations. Bulgaria can enter a wartime state at any time, and the major domestic factories have all been included in the government's overall planning. The strategic material reserve is enough for a 200,000 strong army for a year. At present, a special wartime fund of 100 million lev has been raised, but the subsequent construction projects may be postponed. Ferdinand nodded with satisfaction, and then said, well, you did a good job, let's start mobilizing. Although most of the reserves are not needed, it's just an exercise. How is the military preparation of the Chief of Staff? When can I start? After listening to Ferdinand's words, Petrov replied confidently, Your Excellency, please rest assured, there is only Serbia, and we can attack at any time. According to staff estimates, the war will last no more than 2 months. Under normal circumstances, within a month, we can occupy Kraljevo and end the war. How to fight? Ferdinand wisely chose to default. I know my own level. If it's just talking about soldiers, it's okay. Formulating a strategy is still going to work. If you really want to command the battle, it's not as good as Alcuo. How is the commandability of the Bulgarian military? This is really hard to say. At least they commanded a group of militia 9 years ago, and they overturned Serbia. At least the tactical level is qualified. Ferdinand smiled and said, Serbia has already started nationwide mobilization, so let's start it. Can't really wait for them to be ready before going to war. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is responsible for finding a suitable excuse to declare war, and other departments cooperate. The military must not forget the strategic purpose of this war. All battles revolve around the core goal of maximizing the weakening of Serbia's living strength. Yes, Petrov came back with a sonorous force. Chapter 122, Bulgarian Mobilization. With Ferdinand's order, the Bulgarian war machine immediately began to operate. The benefits of investing heavily in infrastructure are reflected, and strategic materials from all over the country are gathered in Sofia in an orderly manner. Sofia, despite its rich history and excellent climate, is not a good capital from a safety point of view. It is too close to the borderline, and once a war breaks out, it will immediately become the front line. The closest place to Serbia is only 100 kilometers away. Poor relations with Serbia make it subject to military threats from Serbia at any time. In order to protect the security of the capital, Bulgaria had to deploy a large number of troops in Kinzie and Trun. Half of the country's troops can be gathered around Sofia, and Serbia can contain more than 60% of Bulgaria's military power. Since Ferdinand came to the throne, he has always wanted to solve the military threat from Serbia to Sofia. It is gratifying that Serbia has not been in a state since the Bulgaria-Serbia War 9 years ago, and Ferdinand has not been unable to sleep. The contradiction between both sides has a long history, and the grievances between the two sides are not clear. After Ferdinand succeeded to the throne, it was not that he did not think about easing the relationship between both sides. But after he had a deep understanding of the contradiction between both sides, he could no longer have the idea of reconciliation. If it is said that the conflict between Germany and France is due to the Alsace-Lorraine territorial dispute, the continental hegemony dispute, and the market competition between capitalism, it is difficult to ease. In addition to the territorial dispute, the battle for the defense is more importantly the struggle for survival! Both are in the Balkans, and when the powers look around, both countries have the will of self-improvement, but how can the small Balkans be able to accommodate it? At the same time, both countries are a mixture of Slavs and other ethnic groups. Under the influence of Russia, both countries consider themselves the leaders of the Slavs in the Balkans. One holds the flag of Greater Serbia and the other holds the flag of Greater Bulgaria. The two sides have a tacit understanding of the other side within the target range. It can be said that water and fire are incompatible. Compromise does not exist anymore. Everyone wants to annex the other side. War is a matter of time, unless one side completely falls. Ferdinand can swear that he is really not interested in Serbia, and he does not want to build a new version of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But I can't stand the people of the whole country who have this idea. Ferdinand has no ability to fight against the people of the country. To use a popular saying, a qualified Bulgarian does what he has to do to eat, sleep, believe in God, and fight Serbia. If possible, beat the Ottomans, even better! Speaking of the Serbs on the other side, they have similar ideas. Even now that Bulgaria's national strength is several times that of Serbia, no one from the Serbian government has proposed to improve relations with Bulgaria. Since you're destined to be the enemy, you can only take advantage of your illness to kill you. In line with the principle of strike first to be stronger, and later to suffer, on October 5, 1894, the Bulgarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs submitted an ultimatum to Serbia. The Serbian government was ordered to hand over the war criminals in the Bulgarian-Serbian War 9 years ago within 3 days for a public trial by the Bulgarian Special War Tribunal, and a list of war criminals was also listed. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is still very disciplined, not fabricated out of thin air. There is solid evidence. It's just that the list is a bit longer. Basically, the officers who were still alive were on the list after participating in the last Palo War. There is simply no choice for the Serbian government, and the countdown to the war has begun. The Foreign Ministry's far-fetched excuse, Ferdinand wisely chose to ignore it. In the last Bulgarian war, Serbia was defeated. Although it did not pay much price, it still admitted defeat and apologized, admitting the act of aggression. In theory, the Bulgarian government still retains the right to pursue war criminals, but it has been 9 years. It doesn't matter, this excuse, on the surface. The war started by Bulgaria, still just. Anyway, all Bulgarians believe it, and that's enough! In the new district of Sliven, Bulgaria, Wybit is working overtime in a dejected manner, without the passion of the past. That's right. His application to join the army was rejected again. Not only him, but the engineers of the entire machinery factory are not recruited. Although they also actively signed up, the reason is very simple. The machinery factory is a key enterprise. In the Balkans, Every man has a heroic dream. Waibut is no exception. As a native Bulgarian, it has always been his dream to join the army to fight Serbia. Without him, Ferdinand's patriotic education, hatred between Poles, and the key is that Serbia is weak enough, it is safe and secure to fight it, and it can also make military exploits and make a fortune. Every Bulgarian believes this. 9 years ago, the POW War was an example. How Waibut's brother participated in that battle. Because Waibut was hunting in the mountains with his father when he was recruiting, he missed the registration time and missed that battle. Every time he hears his brothers brag, Waibut is in awe. To sum up, Serbia is weak enough and Bulgarians brave enough. The proof is that in a battle on the South Morava River, the new regiment where Brother Hal was in the absence of guns and medicine, defeated the two opposing Serbian regulars with fewer victories and more. Hal, who has a limited education level, can't describe the specific situation. Anyway, he just obeyed the order to fight, and after paying hundreds of casualties, he won the fight in a confused way. After the war, Hal returned triumphantly and was treated like a hero. In addition to the rewards issued by the government, it also brought back rich loot and became the core of the home. Later, when he was young and angry, Waibut came out to seek a life. There was no way he wanted to be a hero, and he didn't want to live in the shadow of his brother. Even though he is married and is already the father of 3 children, Waibut still has not extinguished his heart to go to the battlefield. This is the part of Ferdinand's reserve plan. Adult Bulgarian men have to participate in military training for half a month every year. It can also be regarded as a tradition in the Balkans, and adult men can go to the battlefield at any time. Super is also very annoying now. The leaders have spoken out and asked them to do the ideological work of the workers, not only to complete the production task, but also to exceed the task. Well, he is also interested in going to the battlefield, just like the government propaganda. A life without going to the battlefield is an incomplete life. Anyway, the work is still to be done. This is military production, don't hold back. Seeing the restless Waibut, Super's signature greeting, "What's wrong with Waibut? What's wrong recently?" Waibut said with a wry smile, "You already know, the enlistment application was rejected again." Super pretended to be indifferent and said, "What do I do? Isn't this normal?" Guess what? How many people can defeat them in a mere Serbia? They were our defeated soldiers back then, not to mention now. So, even if you join the army, you don't have the chance to go to the battlefield. It is better to stay in the rear to produce weapons and ammunition, which will play a greater role. After listening to Super's consolation, Waibut's mood is much better. That's right. It's just Serbia! Well, Ferdinand probably did not expect that the self-confidence of the Bulgarian people is much stronger than that of the government. The battle has not yet started, and everyone thinks that we must win, and many people want to enter the melee. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, Serbia. Bulgaria's ultimatum completely dispels Serbia's illusions. War is coming. Alexander I panicked. The war came too suddenly. Since September, the intensification of the conflict between Paul and Serbia has only been a short month. Now Serbia has no time to prepare. Prime Minister, how is our war preparations going? Alexander I asked anxiously. Saw Prime Minister Ferdinand said with a wry smile, Your Majesty, the time is too short, and we have no time to prepare. So far, the nationwide mobilization has barely been completed, with a total of more than 500,000 young and strong mobilized, and they are still distributed throughout the country. It is too late to organize training, and the selection of qualified soldiers has just begun, and it will take at least half a month to complete. The material reserve is even worse. Due to the lack of funds, our procurement work is not going well, and the gap is huge. The Minister of War added, because of our lack of weapons and equipment, Most of the existing weapons are collected from the private sector, and many people bring their own weapons to serve. Weapons and equipment are a mess, and until now, our guns and ammunition statistics have not been completed. The types of firearms are even more varied. Basically, there are all kinds of firearms in the world. We have them now. The number of all kinds of firearms is unknown. This all takes time, at least for the next half-month. The mobilized army will not have any combat effectiveness. It takes at least 2 to 3 months of short-term training to initially form combat effectiveness. Fortunately, everyone's military level is amateur. Otherwise you will find that the actual situation is much worse than said. The variety of weapons and equipment also means that the calibers are different, which is very difficult for supplies. Maybe a lot of people go to the battlefield with guns, but they can't find bullets that can be fired. After listening to the Prime Minister's words, Alexander I angrily asked, "What happened to the Minister of Finance? Why is the money not in place yet? Do we still want to fight? Don't forget that now is the moment of life and death for Serbia, and you still have to fight with each other." The Minister of Finance has a conspicuous look on his face, and he has a conscience of heaven and earth. This time, he tried his best to raise funds, but he still couldn't fill the gold-swallowing cave of the army. Now facing the question of Alexander I, he went back without any guilt. "Your Majesty, please respect yourself. Our Ministry of Finance has done everything we can. Don't forget that the military just fought a counterinsurgency war, tens of thousands of casualties, and the pension alone is an astronomical sum. And now there is a national mobilization again. Domestic taxation is now almost negligible, international loans, bonds, the bankers are not optimistic that we can win this war, so the gains are limited. Now the funds we use are already using the gold reserves of the issued currency, and we must not consume too much, otherwise our currency may collapse at any time now." As soon as the Minister of Finance finished speaking, everyone's expressions changed greatly. In the gold standard era, the currency reserves were used, and if the operation is not good, it will explode. Now, Alexander I, disregarding the opposition of the Minister of Finance, said with a sigh, "I don't care so much. Take it out first, let's pass this level and talk about it. It's easy to say what you win, and all the losses can be in Bulgaria, make up for it. If you lose, you don't have to worry about the currency crashing." The Minister of Finance thought about it, and the same is true. If you win, everything is easy to say. If you lose, someone will take the blame, and the cabinet will not be able to escape. The mess should be left to the next one. Helplessly said, "Okay, but we don't have much gold reserves, so you should save a little bit. If the war is not over, it will be spent, and our Ministry of Finance will not have a single dinar." The Minister of War said bitterly, "Don't worry. If you get to that point, even if you have dinars, I won't want it. It's not much different from blank paper." Alexander I glared at the Minister of War and asked again, "Prime Minister, what is the attitude of the Austro-Hungarian Empire now? Will you be on our side? It's really not good. Buy us some time." Prime Minister Radovan said in embarrassment, "Austro-Hungary has made it clear that they will be on our side, but they are worried that if they intervene directly, and the Russian Empire also intervenes, the situation will be more troublesome. So they have reached an agreement with the Russian Empire, and now they will not directly interfere in this war. In this war, we can only rely on ourselves." Knowing the attitude of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Alexander I instantly felt betrayed. Both sides are allies. 9 years ago, he helped out, but now he's just sitting on the sidelines. Angrily said, "Forget it, let it go, just pretend that we don't have that ally. Now it's up to us. Minister of War, you must fight for Serbia this time, otherwise Nis is the largest city in southern Serbia, situated on the banks of the Nishava, a tributary of the South Morava River. Now this hustle and bustle city in the past is now a depression. The Aborigines of Djukovic Niš, now in their 60s, were already living a long life in the 19th century. It may be unbelievable to say, he is no ordinary man, and he participated in the war against the Ottomans when he was young. Later, he founded a textile factory in Nis, And he also has more than 100 workers. He is a proper capitalist, but now his life is not easy. After the economic crisis broke out, it was dumped by international capitalists. Djokovic's textile factory never made a profit and was forced to close its doors. After selling the factory, I left a sum of money to retire. But the Bulgarian War was about to break out, and the dinar began to depreciate wildly. The government used the gold reserves, which could not be concealed from the shrewd capitalists, and decisively chose to sell the dinar, and then the dinar began to depreciate wildly. The elderly Djokovic reacted a step slower. When he reacted, the dinar had changed from the original 1 dinar equals 0.29 grams of gold to the current 1 dinar equals 0.01 grams of gold. In an instant, assets shrunk dozens of times, and years of savings were destroyed. Pantridge, the price of flour has gone up again. Well, you can't make up your mind. This must have been ordered by the told Kraksik. Get me a ton of flour and load it up to my house. Djokovic Vicky said with a headache. Mr. Djokovic, so much? Asked the salesman Pantridge in surprise. The war is about to start. How can you do it without hoarding some food? Djokovic said calmly. Mr. Djokovic, the government has announced to calm down prices, and the market will soon return to normal. It's not worth buying so much now. Pantridge, silly boy. Nis will be the front line at the beginning of the war. Who cares about this? Djokovic glared at him and left without looking back. Nis is too close to the front line, and he fought over the last time in the last war to defend the Serbia, and it is estimated that it will not be much better now. Back home, Djokovic did not hesitate. After purchasing the necessities of life, he began to move. He planned to go to his hometown in the mountains to avoid disaster. Djokovic is not an isolated case. The rich people on the Serbian border have begun to move to avoid disasters. Obviously, they are not optimistic about this war. Chapter 124, Declare War. Time flies, and the 3-day deadline for the ultimatum will soon pass. There is no doubt that Serbia did not choose to compromise, and justly rejected Bulgaria's unreasonable demands. At this point, it is impossible for Ferdinand to pretend to be a coward. Just as he was about to declare war, at the last moment Ferdinand remembered the Congress and felt that his food was too ugly, so he decided to frame it. On October 8, 1894, Ferdinand convened an emergency parliament and submitted a motion to declare war on Serbia. Then it passed unanimously, and there were no abstentions. Even those who were unable to arrive and were forced to be absent sent telegrams to vote. Although they were invalid votes, they had to join in the fun. No way this year, in Bulgaria, playing Serbia is politically correct. On the evening of October 8, 1894, Ferdinand publicly declared war on Serbia on the grounds that Serbia was sheltering war criminals. War broke out. It is impossible to make a sensation in the world. Europeans are used to it. It is normal for wars in the Balkans to be a problem if there is no war. Ferdinand, who cherished his face, did not order a sneak attack at night, and was ready for a head-to-head confrontation! Well, it's all advertised in the newspapers. In fact, it's not that Ferdinand didn't consider a surprise attack an undeclared war, but considering the relationship between the two countries, the attack is a fart. Old rivals, how could they not be on guard? The most important thing is that the power of the artillery cannot be exerted at night, and it is easy to accidentally injure one's own people. Bulgaria has a lot of advantages this time, and there is absolutely no need to give up its advantages and choose an adventurous night attack. Almost all of the senior Bulgarian military have participated in the last Bulgarian war, and they clearly know that the Serbs are not as weak as propaganda in the newspapers. And after the last war, Serbia frantically built defensive fortresses on the border. Fortunately, the Serbian government was short of money, and the defense line was not completed. According to the plan of the General Staff, Bulgaria sent 150,000 troops this time, dividing the troops into the left, middle and right, and attacked Serbia at the same time. The main forces in the middle route army, attacking from the Turin area. The goal is to disintegrate the main military force of Serbia south of the South Morava River, 3 standing divisions, 1 new division, A total of 70,000 troops will hunt Leskova. The Left Army has a standing division and 2 new divisions, with a total of more than 50,000 people, starting from the Mijel mountain area, and the goal is to occupy the important town of Nis in Serbia. The Right Army has the smallest number of partial divisions. There are only 2 divisions with more than 30,000 people, but they are all standing divisions. Although the number is small, their combat effectiveness is not weak at all. Starting from the Vidin area, go straight to the Morava River, and the goal is Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. After the intensification of the conflict between the defenders, Dante Christov, the commander of the Bulgarian 3rd Division, who was stationed in Mount Mijel, began to worry. He is not worried about not being able to win Serbia, but Ferdinand's order to minimize the casualties of soldiers and kill the living forces of the Serbs as much as possible. The 3rd Division is the Bulgarian standing division, and its combat effectiveness is undeniable. This time, it will form the Left Army with the newly formed 10th and 12th Divisions. Dante Christov became the commander-in-chief of the Left Army by virtue of his outstanding performance in the last war. Dante Christov is not afraid of fighting. How can he weaken the living force to the greatest extent possible, which makes it difficult for him? Kill prisoners? Kill civilians? This is obviously impossible. Ferdinand wasn't so crazy yet, and neither was Dante Christov. He probably understood what Ferdinand meant, that is, to beat Serbia down at one time, it is best to listen to Bulgaria, and ask them not to cause trouble to Bulgaria for decades! Time went back to 3 days ago, the Joint Operations Expansion meeting. All the cadres above the legion level on the left road participated, and hundreds of people were all over the place. Dante Christov said, under normal circumstances, on October 8, 1894, we will declare war on Serbia. Chief of Staff, please introduce the basic situation. The Chief of Staff said in a lively atmosphere. The battle plan for Serbia was formulated by the staff very early. If it were to be piled up together, this room might not be able to be piled up. Everyone burst into laughter. Watching everyone's nervousness eased slightly, the Chief of Staff began to introduce the strength comparison between the enemy and us. Okay, this is the end of the joke. As everyone knows, our left army is composed of 3 divisions and 2 artillery regiments this time, with a total of more than 56,000 people. There are more than 54,000 rifles, all of which are Bulgarian 1889 type, imitation water lentils, more than 150 machine guns, more than 100 light and heavy artillery guns, and more than 3,000 pistols of various types. Compared with the defense war 9 years ago, our family background is much thicker, and the firepower of the Left Army alone exceeds that of the year. Weapons and ammunition, this time everyone can put their hearts in their stomachs. 20 million bullets and 80,000 artillery shells have all been in place, and there's a steady stream of ammunition at the rear that can be replenished. The material reserves are enough, we can start a war at any time. After a pause, he added, look at the Serbs on the opposite side. There are more than 168,000 people deployed in the Nis generation, which is almost 3 times as many as us. But don't worry, we all know that Serbia has a little fighting force in the regular army, and their standing army is only 110,000. No, it should be more than 90,000. They have lost more than 10,000 in the civil war not long ago. In other words, they deployed the main force in the Nis area, with a maximum of 30,000 or 40,000 people, which is my main opponent this time. After all, the border between us and Serbia is so long, and we need to be guarded everywhere. The other 100,000 people are a group of peasants who have just put down their hoes and resisted guns. Maybe not everyone even has a gun. The intelligence department has found out that their weapons and equipment are very confusing. There are many kinds and ages, and they can open a weapons museum. At the joke of the Chief of Staff, everyone couldn't help laughing again, and the discussion started whispering. Although there is no doubt about the outcome of this war, the hundreds of thousands of troops on the opposite side seem to be very deterrent. Now it was discovered that the opponents were only tens of thousands of regular troops, and the rest were farmers, and everyone suddenly relaxed. It seems that this task is not difficult to complete. Dante Christophe slapped the table solemnly and said, "Quiet, look at you guys. Don't forget what our mission is this time. It's not just to defeat the enemy and it's over, but to do everything possible, may weaken their vitality." "What do you mean?" "Don't need me to explain. Although we are rough, we all went to school, at least all of them graduated from the officer training class. I can tell you clearly that it is impossible to kill prisoners to complete the task. Military law will not show mercy. How to do it specifically, I do not know either. Anyway, at the beginning of the war, in addition to completing the deployment tasks, whichever unit kills the most enemies is the first credit. I don't care what you do, as long as the result." Chapter 125. In order to complete the task as much as possible, Dante Christophe has delegated to the maximum extent. The battlefield is ever-changing, and it is difficult to determine how to give the enemy the greatest damage. Then the commander-in-chief, "Would it be okay if we fired a few more artillery pieces?" The artillery regiment commander asked with concern. Dante Christophe replied without hesitation, "Yes." The battlefield is ever-changing. As long as you can hit people, the enemy has not surrendered, and the shells have not blown eyes, accidental injury is inevitable. The shrewd person immediately understood Dante Christophe's suggestion, and it can be accidentally injured. It seems that the scope can be expanded. In addition to the army, there are a large number of civilians on the battlefield. Serbia's poor ghost government doesn't even have the military uniforms now. In case of misidentification and accidental injury, it can be forgiven. Frankly speaking, as a conscientious soldier, Dante Christophe disdained to do this. However, the hatred between Bozai has overwhelmed his conscience. As long as he doesn't directly slaughter civilians, he has no pressure. Now Dante Christophe has found that there are a lot of people below with bright eyes, and they have the meaning of a big fight. He didn't mean to stop at all, but asked enthusiastically, "Any questions?" "No." Everyone said in unison. Dante Christophe nodded, and then said, "The order given to us by the military council is that as soon as war is declared, the war can start, and it is up to you to decide when to fight. Then the Chief of Staff will arrange combat missions." The Chief of Staff thought for a while and said, "In order to eliminate the enemy to the greatest extent possible, as soon as war is declared, we will launch an attack. I order, Regiment 107 and Regiment 109, you will serve as the first wave of troops to tear through the enemy's line of defense. Yes. After setting up the combat mission, the Chief of Staff warned, "The battlefield is ever-changing, and we must prepare for war from now on. In case the Serbs can't think of it and take the initiative to attack, you can't overturn the ship in the gutter." Everyone laughed. If the Serbian army on the opposite side was a regular army, it is estimated that this possibility is very high, but now that group of peasants, if they are used in defense, may still have some fighting power. If they take the initiative to attack, maybe a single artillery fire may collapse! It's a pity that Ferdinand's declaration of war was in the evening, and Dante Christophe's immediate attack plan was forced to delay. After all, the power of artillery was almost abolished when attacking at night. But the right army above him is now starting to move. Although the right army is the smallest in number, its combat effectiveness is no weaker than that of the left army. 2 main divisions plus 2 artillery regiments. These 2 divisions had night combat experience in the last Bulgarian war. At the end of the 19th century, communication was not so developed. Even telegrams took time. The Bulgarian army could know the time in advance, but the Serbian army had to wait for the notice. From the time Ferdinand declared war, the news reached the frontline generals. Even if it was efficient, it would take several hours. Why are many classic wars fought at night? It's not because the night is not conducive to combat, and it is also the time when the defense is the most slack. Popov, the commander-in-chief of the Right Road Army, 1885, when the Russians evacuated the officers in the Serbian War, Popov, who was only a captain at that time, was with Captain Atanas Bandelev Vanorimpi, Captain Panlov and others, were ordered to command the army to defeat Serbia in a critical situation. You read that right. The commander in the Bulgarian War 9 years ago only had the rank of captain. There was no way that after the Russians evacuated the officers, there were not so many officers in Bulgaria at all, and the situation was in crisis, and those with related backgrounds hid. Popov, a young officer, was fortunate enough to be a member of the blamer, but when they won, they became heroes. After Ferdinand came to the throne, after cleaning up some of the military veterans, these outstanding generals began to rise to the fore. Popov, who was a lieutenant colonel battalion commander in 1887, was promoted to colonel brigade commander in 1889, was promoted to division commander in 1892, and is now appointed commander-in-chief of the Right Route Army. As the hero of the last POW war, he is no fool. Military literacy has also passed the Ferdinand assessment, and only have the opportunity to rise to the sky. The reason why they chose to attack at night was completely forced by the Serbs, who made the Vidan area unfavorable to the battle of the large army, and it was not a strategic location and was not taken seriously. The Serbs on the opposite side put 80,000 troops, which seems to be a lot, but unfortunately these people are not used for defense. Most of them are young and strong, recruited locally. They can be regarded as training camps in the rear. They are training and defending. If you just want to win the war, there is no need to fight at all. Threatening the capital of Serbia also requires the left army to break through Nis, so that the right army can move forward without worries, otherwise the supply line will be cut off. But now Ferdinand's strategy is to take the opportunity to weaken Serbia, so Popov's task is important. Once a breakthrough was made, pushing the front to the Great Morava River, the Serbs had to go to hell. There is no reason not to eat the meat that you put in your mouth. Raid the regular army at night, and worry about being in an ambush. It's perfect for raiding a peasant who has just put down his hoe. Because Popov's army was suddenly transferred, and all of them were marked with malicious signs, they did not attract the attention of the Serbs. Anyway, this is not the place for a decisive battle. As long as Niš is not lost, there is basically no strategic value here. Their headquarters is in Niš. At midnight, the Serb who had just finished a day of training was in his sleep when he was suddenly stunned by the sound of artillery fire. The Bulgarian army is attacking. The Serbian officers began to organize the army while scolding the Bulgarians for the shameless sneak attack. It's a pity that the war came too suddenly, and they are not regular troops. In the dark night, the Bulgarian artillery is aiming at the light. A raid on the Serbian barracks in the Danube area, and there was total chaos. Officers can't find their soldiers, and soldiers can't find their officers. The entire military camp was in chaos. Under the tension, a soldier's gun went off, and then caused a chain reaction. In ancient terms, the camp screamed ! A tragic night battle broke out, and the front-line officers in Serbia on the other side finally received the notice of the start of the war. The Bulgarians are really here, and the officers of the Serbian army headquarters in Nis are busy meeting. The commander-in-chief of the front line, Saborovic, the hawkish leader of the Serbian army, is now looking at the map with worry. Don't look at his usual slogan shouting, "What is it to beat Sofia and capture Ferdinand alive?" That's just for prestige, political needs. Now that the war is really coming, Saborovic has a hard time accepting it. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.